on the cab. We were unable to see if the driver was pulled out of that cab by people, but we certainly saw a large crowd. And there was a fairly quick response. When you consider all the people that were there, and certainly people scattering at the time when this happened, a fairly quick response from Minneapolis police, I'm assuming state troopers, to get to that bridge. But this is absolutely what they did not want to have happen. And at really, Julie, kind of the worst possible place it could happen, because there's only one way in, one way out. And you can't attack that area as far as law enforcement from the side.
Difficult to get there, but they did get there.
They did
very
get
quickly.
there fast. There's no doubt.
And you're taking a live look now at another march that is going on. There had been a couple going on at the same time, a couple different rallies. Gordon Severson is near the scene of what just happened on 35W, and I'm just wondering, he's been talking to people who may have witnessed it. Gordon, do you know anything else for us?
Look, this the tough motherfucker right here.
We apologize. This is a live broadcast, and we apologize. Emotions are high. Obviously, they're letting off tear gas.
Tear gas. They're tear gassing that exit, or that entrance ramp.
Sorry, Gordon. We didn't realize you were speaking.
Yep.
Can you repeat yourself?
The protesters are peaceful. Nobody's doing anything.
Right, nobody's doing anything, so what is the point of this? Thank you.
Yeah, they're launching tear gas, starting to move up the exit ramp, trying to force this group onto University Avenue. Lots of, I mean, probably dozens of canisters shot up to protesters. They obviously don't want them to come back on the highway. The other side where we're at is safer. They are keeping their distance. Actually, we're gonna have to start moving.
You're gonna
they
need
are
to
starting
move.
to fire tear gas.
Yep, and Gordon is in that area, coming up the ramp onto University, like you'd be heading to the U of M at that point. So you can see officers are trying to clear that entrance ramp onto 35 and then get up to University. But there are so many people up in that area. It is going to be a challenge. And I guess we can only assume, Julie, they're coming from the other directions on University as well, to try to get these people dispersed as quickly as they can.
And it's unfortunate, because you can hear the confusion from the people in the crowd that feel like, we're just standing here. Why are they forcing us back? And we don't have the answer to that yet. It may be just because exactly what Gordon said. They just want to make sure that nobody tries to come back on that interstate. We did see just a few minutes ago, they were throwing out tear gas canisters because people had started to approach the line of officers trying to protect that area with their hands in the air. They're doing it peacefully, but the officers are trying to get control of that scene, and so they're trying to get them off the interstate. But it's just, it is
well, you can see
a scary scene to watch unfold live on television.
Up top there, that University, the bridge has been cleared for sure, up top there. You know, I think it's probably safe to say that this protest in Minneapolis is done for the day, because I don't know if officers at this point will allow anything more to happen just because of...
Well, certainly not in that area.
No.
Certainly not in that area. We had mentioned that the interstate's closed down at 5, and we want to let you know, too, when Andy Mack was reporting for us, and we saw what appeared to be a National Guard helicopter with a bucket hanging below it, flying over the crowd, and then we saw the crowd starting to run. Unclear what that relationship was, if it had anything to do with that chopper, or if they were running because there were tear gas canisters that we couldn't see. We do know that those Minnesota Guard choppers have been putting out fires. They've been dropping, Rita, you're talking to me. Just want to let my producer know she's talking in my ear. They've been dropping on fires, and I do want to let you know I've been monitoring social media for the last hour, and it does appear that things have started to heat up a bit in St. Paul with reports of cars without license plates and that kind of thing. So not sure what that National Guard chopper was doing in the area, but we do know that this police and National Guard were already on high alert. Last night was much more peaceful, obviously, because there was such a large presence of officers on the ground, and they clearly had a plan as to not let large crowds, thank you, Rita, large crowds gather. They have a situation now where there are many, many large crowds that have gathered in Minneapolis and St. Paul. This just definitely complicated things. I believe we have Andy on the phone, or was it Gordon, Rita? Andy, let's go to Andy Mack. He'd been running in the other direction. Andy, and what caused the crowd to start to run?
Yeah, hey, well, we're out here. We're on a couple side streets off of University Avenue. Obviously, like you saw the gas and it gets in your eyes and it's very, very painful and people are dispersing in lots of directions. There are a lot of Good Samaritans out here, though, passing out water to try to clear their eyes of this toxin, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. But like I said, a lot of people have moved onto the side streets here and just trying to get their bearings right now, like me and my my photographer Ron.
Yeah, so Andy, are you all right?
See if they can help you with some
Yeah,
water,
we're
Andy,
doing
if that's
all
what you
right.
need.
It just stings a lot.
Yeah.
So we had seen a Minnesota National Guard helicopter. It had nothing to do with that. It was tear gas canisters being deployed to get people. You were exactly where were you, on the ramp at the time or close to that ramp?
We were close to the ramp. There were a few people on that ramp. There were a few people on that. That might have been what instigated the police to do that. Just trying to get pushing people up toward the on-ramp right now. But people have started to settle down once they get their bearings. I don't know how many people are close to the on-ramp anymore, but we are a block and a half, 2 blocks away from it right now.
Yeah.
We're a few blocks off University and a few blocks away from 35W.
All right, we're going to let you go. We appreciate it and hope you're okay. Thank you, Andy.
Did he even give you consent to record her?
Obviously, a chaotic scene that happened here about 25 minutes ago with a semi-truck and that barreled onto 35 North.
And I believe Boyd is with someone who witnessed it. Boyd, what can you tell us?
Hi, Julie. Yeah, we're actually in a parking garage on the roof looking down at the scene. The semi-truck is still parked here. Debris where the truck barreled into a crowd of people. I wasn't here when it happened, but I'm standing here with Chantel, she didn't want her face shown on TV, but she has agreed to talk to me. So this is Chantel that you're going to hear. Chantel, tell me what you saw.
Yeah, there was a semi traveling northbound on I-35. He was driving on the left shoulder. He's been honking his horn since before he crossed under the Washington Avenue Bridge, but there appeared to be no signs of slowing down before he plowed into the group of protesters.
Were you up here on the roof where we are now when this all happened?
Yes.
So you had actually observed the semi before this incident took place?
Yes, so we could hear his horn. He was holding the horn down the entire time since before he crossed under the Washington Avenue Bridge and then continued northbound, plowing into the group of protesters.
When I first saw the video on Twitter, I wondered if somehow he had gotten confused and had taken a wrong road and didn't realize that he was driving into protesters. From what you're telling me, that doesn't sound like that's what happened at all.
It didn't appear that he was slowing down. He was driving in the left shoulder the entire time on northbound I-35, but he did end up driving right into the group of protesters.
And the fact that he was there honking his horn, I mean, he knew there were people ahead of him.
Yes, and also because there are vehicles on northbound I-35 that were driving in the north direction towards a group of protesters, they were turning around. However, those cars were driving south on northbound I-35, so they were driving the opposite direction on I-35.
From what I could see, again on social media, it looked like there would have been room for him to go around them. Is that what you saw too?
They were blocking all 4 lanes of northbound, so including both shoulders. I don't think there would have been a way to avoid them. The protesters scattered as soon as they seen him coming towards them.
So Boyd, this is interesting. So you can clarify, Boyd.
did
I'm
you
sorry
see-
to interrupt. Can you hear me, Boyd? Boyd?
I sure can, Julie.
Can you ask her? So
I hear you, Julie.
we were assuming that he somehow went around the barricade, but this was an area where the interstate was not blocked off yet. They were supposed to close at 5.
Yeah, let me ask Chantel that question. She had a good vantage point because she's on the roof and could see not only the protest but the traffic coming up to the protest and what was happening there. And Julie Nelson just asked, did it appear he went around a barricade? Was traffic barricaded at that time?
No, traffic was not barricaded. The protesters were obviously blocking all 4 lanes and the shoulders, but the traffic, the non-semi, the cars and the trucks, they were trying to turn around up the on-ramp to I-35.
So they were all getting off,
Yes.
but he seemed determined to come through. And I base that on the fact that you told me he was laying on his horn,
Yes.
honking on his horn.
Yes.
So as others were getting off, he seemed determined to continue on his path through the protest.
Yes, yes, and he did not appear to be slowing down, or at least not from our view.
And then talk about what happened after. What did you witness after he did you see him strike people, for instance, and then what happened after that?
He plowed right through the middle of the crowd, but as he continued, I didn't see any bodies on the ground. However, people did scatter. They scattered off of both lanes, and they are, it looks like they're continuing into downtown. The crowd has dispersed immensely, and then shortly after, there has been multiple police arriving on site.
There are about maybe 30 people up on this rooftop with us right now. Was it similar when this happened? Are there other witnesses up here besides you?
Yes, there are other witnesses up here aside from me, and not all of these people were here right away. I would say there was 15, maybe even 10 up here before that happened.
Was there an audible gasp? Were people yelling "stop, stop," or what was happening?
Yes.
What was happening up here?
Yes, and there's a group of motorcyclers that appear to be traveling near the protesters. The motorcyclers, once they heard the semi, they went towards the protesters, and it appeared that they're waving them away since they knew the semi was coming. But that was all I seen.
Okay, Chantel, thank you very much. Julie, were there any other questions that you have
Well, I'm
for
just wondering-
Chantel while she's still here with me? Again, she witnessed this.
Yeah, she's been fabulous and filled in a lot of questions that we've had. But I'm wondering, could she see what happened after the protesters got that semi stopped?
Could you see
To
what
the
happened?
driver.
Julie's asking, could you see, Chantel, what happened to the driver after he came to a stop?
There's a ton of protesters surrounding the vehicle, and cops came up to the vehicle afterwards, but it's just slightly out of view that you can't see if a driver has gotten in or out of the vehicle, or if police have custody of anyone who was driving that semi.
Yeah, and Julie, we are some distance from it. You're watching on a zoom lens, but we're a few football field lengths away with a clear view from this rooftop. But that was probably, and because the back of the truck was toward you, you couldn't see what was happening at the front of the truck.
She did a fabulous...
Chantel, thank you again. Randy, Julie, was there anything else?
Yeah, because you have such a great bird's eye view now. She did a fabulous job describing what she saw. Maybe we can pull the camera shot out a little bit and just show the police presence that's now on the bridge, both directions. And Boyd, maybe you can talk about what we've just witnessed in the last couple of minutes.
Yeah, Chantel, I'm gonna let you go on your way. Thank you so much. Your information was really helpful in helping us make sense of this. Thank you. Yeah, boy, Randy, just in the time that my back has been to the bridge, as I've talked to Chantel, there is a row of law enforcement now, both sides of the bridge. Let's see if I get a little better look around here and what's going on in front of them.
All right, thank you, Boyd.
Boyd, I'm sorry. We have to. Boyd, I'm sorry. We have to cut you off because we want to get over to Gordon real quick. Gordon?
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Gordon. Okay. So I'm not sure exactly what we're looking at. Maybe
I believe Gordon is witnessing some arrests taking place
okay.
right now, and we don't know what that would be in relation to. We know that after this occurred, police arrived very quickly on the scene, and they were trying to get everybody off that bridge, and it appears they wanted them off the ramps as well. They did use tear gas to get the crowd to disperse and head off of the interstate. So we don't know if the arrests are related to what happened with the semi or if they're related to people who would not leave the area when police were telling them to leave. But Gordon is ready now, we understand, and can hear us. What are you seeing, Gordon?
Okay. Yeah, we just saw one person arrested here on the highway, but I want to say that just a few minutes ago, we spoke to a young man who was crying profusely, had some sort of tear gas in his eyes, and a wound to his leg from what he claims was a rubber bullet. He told me that he was on the highway when this truck went onto the highway and was one of the individuals who pulled this man out of the truck. And he says that the truck was going about 30 miles an hour, and he actually spoke to this man, is what he says. We're working to confirm this, but after speaking with this man, He said that the man claims that he was trying to intimidate the crowd, but was not trying to hurt anyone, and was very emotional, did not want to cause any physical pain to this crowd, is what this individual told me. And he said that once they heard that, the protesters pulled him out of the car, and he has since been arrested. And this protester was telling me that they were very happy that they showed the leniency to help this man to get him arrested, where they say police have not been lenient in other instances involving black youth. So obviously we are working to confirm all of this. This is one young man's account who says he was there when this happened, but this person claims to say that he doesn't believe this person driving the truck intentionally wanted to hurt anyone, was merely trying to stop the protest and intimidate protesters. But I want to say, take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah,
we want
either
to
way.
confirm that before we say that is true.
Well, and Gordon, I'm sorry, we couldn't catch what you said about the young man was saying people were helping the driver. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that they pulled him out. He said that some protesters did punch him and were assaulting him, but they did pull him out to safety when police came, and they were able to get him arrested. He said that once they heard his side of the story, that they stopped punching him and pretty much kept him safe until police arrived. But then when police arrived, they say that instantly police were firing tear gas into the crowds and firing rubber bullets on them.
Yeah, well, we saw also when people saw officers with the sirens going, that most of them did start running the other direction and running off the bridge as well. But wow, yeah, we'll work to confirm that story. But we were really worried when we saw that cab door from Sky 11.
Right.
You could see it open and shut a couple different times. We all have images in our head
Rodney King.
that are Rodney King related, of when people got pulled out of
That
cars.
semi-truck driver in the intersection. I'll never forget that. Absolutely.
So we'll wait to get all of that confirmed, but that was what an eyewitness claimed happened earlier today. And again, we had been wondering how that semi got on the road. And according to some eyewitnesses who were standing on a parking garage roof watching the marchers go by, that it wasn't closed in that area.
Here we go. Here's some social media video right now. Oh my, oh my. People just trying desperately to get out of the way. Just trying to get out of the way. And I can't tell people, I'm sure if they were carrying backpacks or jackets or something, just toss them off to the side. Here it is again. We have no audio, so
and they realize that
and this is
it's
coming from and the person who was taking this video kind of dropped the camera down, so we can't really see the truck coming through all the way through.
It is hard to imagine. At this point, we don't know of anyone that was hurt. It is hard to imagine that a semi-truck going 35 miles an hour or so through a crowd of thousands of people didn't hurt someone. We know he was laying on his horn apparently the entire time that he was driving through these protesters. Apologize for that chopper sound right there. So we know he was driving. It'll be interesting to know what he's hauling too. That looks like a dangerous load he might have on the back of that truck.
I'm sorry, Rita. Did you say we're going to Andy or Gordon? Okay. I just want to mention as we go to Andy that the governor is going to have a news conference tonight at 7 o'clock. So that's 30 minutes from now. And we will carry that news conference live for you at 7. All right, let's go to Andy. Andy?
Hey, thank you, Randy. We're here just a few blocks from 35W and 3 blocks off of University Avenue as well. I'm here with Keith. You were kind of in the mix of this. You were on 35W. Right. Take me through what happened in your eyes.
I guess we had just got through marching through downtown and over the bridge. Very peaceful protest, beautiful protest, great people. It hasn't hit curfew yet. We're going onto the 35 bridge. Once we get to the 35 bridge, we're all still congregating and it's all still peaceful. We're all just chanting. We're all just, saying prayers and just bigging up Floyd's memory. And then I guess a semi-truck with a trailer came through and just mowed through people, full speed. And the police pulled up, police and SWAT. When we were running away, they blocked us coming off the coming off the on-ramp, jumped out of their cars, in their vehicles, started shooting indiscriminately at women and children and everybody, and tear gas. There's 2 children were missing, 2 3-year-old boys are missing because of the chaos, and it's just not right.
Obviously everyone kind of dispersed back on University Avenue, and then the police presence came. Where were you when the police presence was there?
When the police presence came, we were on the bridge, and then the semi truck drove through on the other side, or drove through on I guess our side, and that's when everyone started moving back the way that I came. And there's just so many of us that we couldn't really escape. And so by the time even a small fraction of us were on the entrance of the bridge, the police and SWAT had pulled in with vehicles, SWAT members on top, shooting down at us, bullets passing through the trees, through the bushes, hitting people.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it was a scary moment out there. Obviously, everyone's kind of dispersed. We're out here on a front lawn right here, just a few blocks off 35W. A lot still has to be learned about what happened today, but for now, we're going to send it right back to you guys.
It's not right.
Yeah.
It's not right. We can all agree on that.
We
It is not
absolutely
right.
agree on that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Fucking
We've got Boyd, who's standing on top of a parking ramp with some people that were watching, thinking, just watching a peaceful march go down the interstate when this all unfolded.
Yeah.
Boyd?
Yeah, Julie, we've been trying to piece this together. We were not here when this happened, but we have come to this rooftop garage. The scene is just beneath us there. You can still see some of the scattered debris, and the truck is still up on the 35W bridge. Nick, come on over here for a second. This is Nicholas Johns. And you were on this parking ramp where we are standing right now, correct?
Correct.
When this happened, looking
Correct.
down at the protesters on the freeway. And pick up the story from there regarding the truck.
So we were out here just visualizing, kind of here on the railing. At about 5:45, a little maybe a minute after, truck started barreling down, blaring its horn with no intention. It looked like it was going to stop at all. It honked on the horn, and luckily the crowd was able to disperse. I looked like people got hit. I couldn't tell. Some people said somebody was sitting down and wasn't able to get out. I don't know, but it was intense.
I talked to a young lady earlier, and she told me that you couldn't miss the horn, right?
Right.
This wasn't a situation where he got confused, wound up on the wrong road,
No.
or didn't realize there were people on the road.
It was
asleep.
it was
I don't know
yeah.
anything that you would want to say that would offer some suggestion that this wasn't intentional.
Right.
You didn't see anything like that?
No, you heard a horn, which sounded, it was coming. You could hear it coming underneath the bridge. And so everybody kind of looked, and about 5:45, like I said, a little bit after, it was barreling into that crowd, and they were separating, just parting, thankfully. But he was probably going about 60, 70 miles an hour, and it looked deliberate. There's no way, you couldn't see 3,000 people.
Were you? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh, my heart dropped to my stomach. I thought I was going to witness just something massive, chaotic, which it is, but at the same time, hopefully no life was lost.
Hey,
The
Boyd,
one
I'm
thing
going to
I
interrupt
don't
you,
know,
Boyd,
and
if you
they may
don't
even know
mind.
back at the
Boyd,
station.
let me interrupt you quick because the
Yes.
Minnesota Department of
Yes.
Public Safety just tweeted out a minute ago, very disturbing actions by a truck driver on I-35W inciting a crowd of peaceful demonstrators. The truck driver was injured and taken to a hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. He is under arrest. It does not appear any protesters were hit by the truck. This is about the best case scenario that you could hope for in this situation, when a truck driver, for reasons we still cannot confirm, drove into a crowd of thousands of people that were on 35W peacefully protesting. And to find out that he has non-life-threatening injuries, and to find out that it does not appear that any protesters were hit by that truck, is an absolute best-case scenario. When this started unfolding live on Sky 11, those of us who've been around for a while could remember very clearly video from a chopper in the Rodney King demonstrations where a truck driver got
Right.
pulled from a truck.
And it wasn't that in that incident, he was just trying to
Correct.
go from point A to point B. He was not trying. He got caught in the middle of a melee of a riot, and unfortunately for him, was pulled from that truck and beaten severely.
Yeah, we've just read this tweet from the Department of Public Safety. So if we go back to a chopper shot or a shot of what's happening right now.
Yeah, this is the incident right here. You see the truck, and again, from the witness reports, honking the horn, laying on the horn the entire time, heading underneath the overpass and onto 35. And of course, now you see the crowd gathering around it.
Eyewitnesses saying that people were appearing to scatter, and we've seen some video on social media. It is amazing that they were able to, the word must have gone through the crowd very quickly that it was coming, because people were able to scatter, and it sounds like no one was hurt.
Well, and also the woman who Boyd had said there were motorcyclists who actually went ahead of that truck, saw it coming, heard it coming, and tried to get people
appeared
to
to
move
alert
and get
people.
out, get out of the way.
Let's go to Gordon Severson. He's been talking with some people who witnessed the incident. Gordon?
Yeah, Julie and Randy, I've got House Majority Leader Ryan Winkler here, who was actually marching with the group of demonstrators earlier. Tell us, what you saw, what you experienced.
I came as part of a peaceful protest from the government center downtown across University Avenue. I didn't go on the 35W bridge, and what I saw was a very peaceful protest, and then panic struck the crowd as apparently a truck ran across into the crowd, and people started running away, and people that I saw, who I know who were there, reported that the truck tried to intimidate or drive into the crowd, and protesters pulled them out, and the police apparently have made an arrest. I haven't seen these things myself. I was just part of the protest, and it looks to me like Minneapolis Police Department and State Patrol are keeping protesters off the approach ramps onto the 35W bridge and keeping the crowd pushed back.
And what would you say about the crowd now, the last few minutes since this happened? How have they been reacting to this? What have you been witnessing here, kind of watching this on the highway?
I see a lot of raw emotion out here with this crowd. I think the actions of the National Guard and the State Patrol and Minneapolis Police last night made them kind of maybe reactive today, but overall they have been willing to back up, respect the law enforcement request to back up, and this has been a relatively peaceful operation here at the bridge.
My colleagues in the studio have been calling this a worst case scenario, that this is the worst thing that could have happened here, a peaceful protest. From what you were saying so far, would you agree that this is exactly what people did not want to happen here on the highway?
That's the danger, right? That somebody with an ideological agenda or some emotional charge wants to come and make a statement and rush a truck at this group of protesters. We are fortunate, apparently, that we're not seeing anybody being seriously hurt by it. And in this kind of environment, I think making sure that we are calming people as much as we can and focusing on peaceful tactics is really, really important.
Why do you feel it's important to have local politicians such as yourself out here witnessing this, listening to the crowds? Do you feel that is important?
I feel as a state leader, it's important for me to hear and understand the voices of, especially here, this youth that are out on this march, out on this bridge. And after the city did not burn last night, thousands showed up for peaceful protests today. And I think if we can continue peacefully protesting and hearing this voice, it'll be very important as we formulate a response, both to have justice in the case of George Floyd, but also how do we reform our system and make it work better and more equitably for all people in Minnesota.
Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on this. We'll send it back to you in the studio, and we'll try to get more information from you, from more witnesses here at the scene.
We appreciate it. Thank you
Thanks,
so much, Gordon. Just a couple things as I've been looking through social media, trying to find out more information about what happened in different perspectives. There are some questions people had. First
Thank you
of all,
very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Gordon. Andy Mack was talking with a witness who said that the police started shooting at the protesters. We want to be clear, what they were doing was they were deploying tear gas. They were not shooting bullets into the crowd, just so that everyone is clear. They were using that tear gas to try to get everyone off of the interstate and off of the ramp leading to the interstate to try to clear that scene, which is now, frankly, a crime scene. We know that the driver has been arrested. He has non-life-threatening injuries. There are reports that the crowd was beating him. They'd pulled him out of the cab and had started to assault him. But he has non-life-threatening injuries, and from what we can tell, no one was hit by that tanker. Another thing we want to address is that MnDOT, we understand, did turn off the cameras in that area for a time, and people are asking why. And the answer is that we did not know what was going to happen, and this could have turned ugly. This could have ended in a loss of life here, which they would not want broadcast live. So we too were very careful when we had our cameras on the cab of that truck and it was all unfolding, that our shot was not too close, because this could have gone sideways even more so very, very quickly, and it was all unfolding live on TV.
You know, as I sit here and I think about what we saw on that video, if that driver really wanted to hit some people, he could have. I mean, he could have turned left, could have turned right as he was coming through that crowd. You know, as people scattered one direction or the other, and I'm not trying to justify what he did, but it really could have been absolutely appalling had he hit all those people. So it's,
well, the
it's
other
amazing.
thing is he's driving what appears to be a fuel tanker,
Right.
which is
And we
incredibly
don't know if
dangerous in itself.
Yeah, we don't know if it's full or not. But.
Correct, but the sight of that was very scary. We can't know the
Absolutely.
motive at this point. We do know we're getting an update here from the governor at 7 o'clock. He had called a presser, we're assuming before any of this even happened, to update everyone on the situation of both Minneapolis and St. Paul right now. And we're hoping that at that press conference, and assuming that he'll have much more information for us on what we know about why this happened, how this happened, and whether or not anyone was hurt. But we did see with our own eyes how quickly that semi was going through that crowd. When we got video, or by the time we caught up with the video, it looked like the crowd had already dispersed before he was entering that section of the freeway. But you could not have missed the thousands of people. You could not have missed the fact that the entire interstate was blocked off.
Right.
Some of you are texting me or tweeting me rather and saying, well, why were they on the interstate in the first place? You know, that's a whole separate conversation to have. The fact is they were on the interstate. There were thousands of them. As we heard from eyewitnesses, there were women and children, young and old, on that interstate. And clearly you would have seen that. We could see it from a helicopter in the sky.
Well, and the other part of that, Julie, is that when they sent out the itinerary hours and hours ago to Minneapolis police knew they were going to end up on the bridge. That was part of this protest, going from downtown to University to get off on 35W and to have what we saw at Hennepin Avenue Bridge, a moment of silence and that kind of thing. So this was a planned part of this protest, was to be on the bridge at this time. So it wasn't a surprise. It wasn't like they took it over.
Mm-hmm.
That this was part of their itinerary. And
That's an important point, Randy. I'm glad you made that.
With the blessing, I'm assuming, obviously, because
Or the knowledge at the very least.
well, the roads were blocked off, though, supposedly, and we didn't see them.
Mm-hmm.
When they got on the bridge, there was not traffic on the bridge.
Correct.
They were on the bridge, it was clear. And so it's not like they overtook either side of the interstate at any point during the march down to 35W.
And you know, we did get reports from some eyewitnesses that some of them had been kneeling, which has been something that's been happening throughout the Twin Cities today at these various rallies and marches, kneeling in honor of George Floyd. With, you know, the kneeling on, getting down on one knee has taken on such significance in the fight for equality with Colin Kaepernick and kneeling in silence. So there are reports too that people had been kneeling. So this is truly a miracle that nobody got seriously hurt as far as we know at this point. Gordon Severson is in the area, and he's been talking with some people, some eyewitnesses and others who were in the area as well. And I believe we have him with us now live. Gordon?
Yeah, Julie, I'm here with Kali, who was on the highway when this happened. Tell me what you saw.
So I was about a third leg back, but we seen the semi plow through protesters. I mean, obviously we're out here thousands and thousands of people, and we had a locomotive plow through hundreds of people. You know, they had to literally get to the side rails in order to avoid being hit. He seemed to have no regard for human life whatsoever.
And did you see anyone being hit? What did you experience in that regard?
People got hit. It's a crowd of protesters, hundreds and thousands of people out here. I'm sorry, maybe not that many. There's thousands of people out here. And you had a semi plow through people. People got hit. Yes. And his intention was to kill. I mean, why else do you drive a semi through innocent people, protesters?
And you were saying before that you're from Minneapolis here. What is it like to see the events that have unfolded over the last few days? What is your takeaway from everything that we've experienced here?
I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, it just, I just want to echo the fact that this is not an isolated incident. We are mourning the death of George Floyd, but in no way is this an isolated incident. We stand here in solidarity today for the persecution that has gone on for years and years by the law enforcement all across this country, all across this nation. This is an uprising that has gone, that expresses the outrage of people that we felt for years and years. So I want you guys to connect the dots and connect the links of racism in law enforcement all across this country.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your perspective on this. We're going to send it back to you in the studio, and we're going to try to get another perspective here of the bridge here. We have seen several buses coming in. I've been trying to look to see if they're carrying anyone, but I haven't been able to get a good look. And within the last minute or two, we've actually seen a significant increase in the amount of squad cars here. It's gone from about 5 to 10 to probably several dozen. I would say 40 to 50 squad cars here now, 5 or 6 deep on every single lane, trying to make sure that nobody goes back onto the highway. And we've seen a couple more tear gas canisters fired into the crowd on the other side of the highway here. Obviously, there's a group on the other side starting to come down on the exit ramp, and police are trying to hold that position, not wanting anyone to come back on the highway.
Gordon, if I think those buses, if they went onto 35, they had police officers in those buses that are now patrolling 35. So if those are the buses that you were referring to. Thank you. Let's go to Boyd. Boyd's got another perspective on all this tonight. Go ahead, Boyd.
Okay, I'm sorry. We've been chatting to people up on this rooftop. We're at a parking ramp rooftop. The scene is just below us here, and Naveen is a law student at the University of Minnesota. He was out here when this happened, just taking it in from up here on the roof?
Yeah, I probably got here a few minutes before that happened. I started recording on my phone at 5:47 p.m. That is after the tanker had plowed into the crowd. So I'm thinking it could have happened between 5:45 and 5:47.
You were here, though, when the tanker came?
I was.
So describe that. He wasn't creeping up to the crowd.
No, I don't think so. So from here, as you can see, there's a pretty much bird's eye view of what's happening here. And as some folks were observing, the tanker pretty much didn't make any attempt to stop. There were cars, folks, and motorcycles on both sides of the road, the highway, and people were yelling, people are honking, but I don't believe there was any attempt to slow down. And this was pretty much, if I were to take a guess, around 60 miles, 70 miles per hour. And I just saw the truck plow into the crowd. There were like folks on all 4 lanes. And then even after that, it tried to swerve into the crowd and then finally probably came to a stop 15 or 20 feet past when it first made contact with the protesters.
We actually just obtained some new video. I'm going to be tweeting that out in just as soon as we're done with this interview, and you can get it on the air. But it shows better than anything that I've seen the speed that the truck was going because of the angle from which it was shot. I gasped when I saw how fast that truck was going. It appeared to be like regular highway speeds. Is that your observation as well?
Right. Yeah. As I said, I don't believe there was any attempt that was made to slow down. Anyone driving here would have been conscious of the huge crowd of folks across all 4 lanes. And as I said, cars and motorcycles on both sides end of the freeway, and they were honking, they were yelling, and my heart just like started sinking as I saw, it was the phrase accident waiting to happen was what I can best describe. People were like, something worse is going to happen, and I don't think the driver of the truck made any attempt to like slow down, and everyone here was like shocked. My partner was in tears, and it was a pretty horrible sight.
I don't know if you've heard, within the past few minutes, we've learned that there were no injuries by any of the protesters. The truck driver had non-life-threatening injuries and is in the hospital now. But having seen what you've seen, what you saw, it's almost hard to believe that no one was injured on the roadway.
I am taken aback. I'm pleasantly surprised, and I'm happy and glad that no one was hurt. But from here, looking at what was happening, I was like, people were run over. That's what I was thinking until, I spoke to you and you gave us the good news that no one had any life-threatening injuries or anything like that. But that's a surprise. From what I witnessed from here, that came as a pretty good surprise.
And there was a group of, I heard maybe about 15 people up here with you watching this, just taking it in, experiencing it, I assume, right?
Yeah, and you could see audible gasps, and people, as I said, my partner was like crying. You saw that huge tanker going through, the crowd, and you knew there were like so many people across all 4 lanes, and people are pretty shocked. And it was a traumatic experience.
And did you hear the horn? Others told me they heard it was almost as if he was laying on the horn as he was heading into the crowd. Did you hear that?
I may have, but, as you saw, the situation was pretty chaotic. I couldn't really tell if the honking was coming from the truck or from the cars parked on both sides of the freeway. There were motorcycles, people yelling, and, I don't know if this is super accurate. I can just guess. Maybe there could have been some honking coming from the tanker, because they have like a pretty distinct honks.
Yeah. But thank you for joining us. The thing that we've heard from all the witnesses that we've talked to up here, and there have been several, three of whom went on camera, and then several others that are here that just didn't prefer to talk to us on camera, but they all tell basically the same story. 50 to 60 miles an hour, it's consistent among all the witnesses that I've talked to up here. And to a one, they've said, this appeared to be a deliberate act. This wasn't a mistake. Got on the road, didn't realize that he was in the wrong place, didn't see the protesters, was drowsy, or any of those things that you would think, none of that would cause a reasonable person not to do this. And that's been consistent from everyone that we talked to, that this looked like an intentional act, that he intentionally drove into the protesters. Now, whether he intended to run over the protesters, we don't know. We don't know what was in his head, or if he was just trying to clear a path and get through. But clearly, he didn't take the safety of these people into mind at all as he drove into that crowd.
Boyd, thank you so much for that. We appreciate it. We want to get over to Danny. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Randy, one more thing.
Sure.
I have that video, and I'm going to be tweeting that out as soon as I get off the air with you. So please have the people back at the station watch my Twitter feed, and we should have that on the air shortly.
And as you were interviewing that young man, we were showing some new Twitter video of the scene at the cab of that truck, too. So thank you, Boyd. The governor is going to speak in about 4 minutes, and we're going to carry that live. But let's get to Danny Spiewak real quick to catch up with Danny. He was over in St. Paul. Danny?
Yes, Randy, the governor's set to speak in about 5 minutes. And of course, the governor's mansion in St. Paul is always a symbolic place for protests. And today, we know some of the 1,500 people who were marching through St. Paul have come outside of the governor's residence with signs, "Justice for George, Justice for Floyd." You can hear some cars that are honking right now. Again, I've been following this group. This is, of course, a small group, but this was a small group, many of which were part of a larger group that started at the state capitol about noon, marched 4 or 5 miles on the interstate back to University Avenue in St. Paul, and they've had consistent messaging all day, of course staying very peaceful, and now coming to the governor's mansion, where they have a message not only for the governor, not only just for state government, but really for all government leaders. And of course, this comes as there's some talk that there will be kind of a shared assistance between the Hennepin County Attorney and the state investigative agency. And so there were calls, of course, all day for the 3 other officers in the Floyd case to be prosecuted. That's what we heard starting at noon at the state capitol. It's what we've continued to hear as they've been marching through the streets of St. Paul. But they're very dedicated, they're very passionate, and they spent hours marching through the streets of St. Paul on is what a pretty humid day, but just spending several miles together. And then we know that some have gone over to the state capitol and some are here at the governor's mansion.
All right, very good. Danny, thank you so much. We're going to go to Gordon Severson, and as we do, I just want to say to Gordon that there's a very real possibility, Gordon, that we'll jump out of your interview to catch up with the governor, who's supposed to speak here in about a little over 2 minutes. Are we going to go to Gordon? Is that the plan? I still see Danny, so I just want to make sure what we're doing. Okay, sorry, we're working on it. So, Gordon, just so you know, we may be dumping out of you at some point in the next couple of minutes to hear from the governor. But go ahead.
Sounds good, Randy. Yeah, we're back here on University Avenue. The crowd is kind of reformed as a group here now and is now chanting "No justice, no peace," and is starting to march down University Avenue. The highway here has cleared of all police cars. The police presence here has moved on, so we can only assume that they are moving up further towards the highway and no longer feel that the crowd coming on the highway is a threat here. So we're seeing hundreds and hundreds of people starting to move down this down University Avenue. Not sure where they're headed. I'll start trying to ask a few individuals if there's an organized place where they're trying to regroup. But obviously the situation has changed here quite a bit. No longer as dangerous as it once was. We're looking further down the highway to see if it is still closed off. We don't see any police cars at this time.
We have to cut you off, Gordon. I'm sorry.
So
the governor is speaking.
Good evening, Minnesota. Last evening, we asked you to honor a curfew, a stay-at-home order. We asked you so that we could regain order on the streets, but there was much broader than that, as I mentioned earlier this morning. We asked you to help us create the space so we could have those important conversations to deal with the systemic problems that caused what you're seeing to happen. Today, tens of thousands of you took that cherished right and exercised your right to get out there and peacefully protest. You made your voices heard. You spoke loudly about the need for justice and swift justice, and you talked about the need to make meaningful change on systemic racism. Now, I'd like to address what many of you saw within the last hour, a horrifying image on our television, a semi-truck illegally entering the closed freeways, appears to be with a flammable or toxic substance driving nearly full force into a crowd of thousands of peaceful protesters. I've been briefed at this point in time. The driver was taken to Hennepin County Medical Center with injuries sustained, being pulled from the vehicle. Commissioner Harrington will follow up further. I believe that driver was arrested. We do not have any confirmed cases of injuries. We're hearing some things on social media that maybe several people were taken by civilian to the hospital. I can't confirm that at this time. What I can tell you is that law enforcement responded to that situation immediately. The reason for that is to protect the peaceful protesters, to make sure that that did not happen. We needed to clear the bridge to ensure that there was nothing volatile with the truck. And the situation as we speak is still happening. I think the incident just underscores still the volatile situation we have out there. I don't know the motives of the driver at this time, but at this point in time, to not have a tragedy and many deaths is simply an amazing thing. We'll get followed up further on the current situation by Commissioner Harrington and Major General John Zenson. But I'd like to tell you what I heard out there today, and I want to address the issue of that. folks across Minnesota and across this country as they gather to express their frustration and their pain. One of the things they've been making very, very clear, they don't trust the process. They don't believe justice can be served, and their frustrations are they believe that time and time again, the system works perfectly well as it was designed to deny those rights and deny justice to communities of color. Restored. And I've spent the day and the last week in many conversations with many people about this issue. And I have made a decision that I think so many others have made, that Keith Ellison, our Attorney General of Minnesota, needs to lead this case. And I say that with a lot of experience to say it. I say it as someone who's known and seen the leadership of Attorney General Ellison for decades. I had the privilege and the pleasure to go into the United States Congress in the class of 2006 and serve for 12 years with Attorney General Ellison. I watched him lead on the issues of civil and human rights. I watched him gain the respect of the entire United States Congress. I watched him formulate and think about things that at the time people said we can't do that, we can't get them done. Keith Ellison was a person there to get that. He understood the systemic issues that were holding us back. And as a member, one of 435 in the United States Congress, his voice was loud. It was also my privilege in 2018, when I was given the privilege of becoming the governor of Minnesota, I entered that with Keith Ellison becoming the Attorney General of Minnesota. He's my lawyer, if you will, for the state of Minnesota. And I've watched his vision and passion. And when I say my lawyer and the state of Minnesota, that's the people's lawyer. He's done that with a command of the law, but with a command of what the law means to people, what it means to stand in front of justice and expect to get that. So this decision is one that I feel takes us in that direction, and the step to start getting the justice for George Floyd. When I spoke to the Floyd family, they were very clear. They wanted the system to work for them. They wanted to believe that there was trust, and they wanted to believe that the facts would be heard and justice would be served. And I can tell you in Minnesota, having Keith Ellison as a lead on this case, that will happen. With that, Attorney General Keith Ellison.
Thank you, Governor. My name is Keith Ellison. I'm the Attorney General for the state of Minnesota. And it is with a large degree of humility and a great seriousness that I accept for my office the responsibility for leadership on this critical case involving the killing of George Floyd. I want to thank my good friend of many years, Mike Freeman, for the hard work he's done. We expect to work together. There is a lot of resources, talent, and ability in his office on cases like this. And I just want to let everyone know that we are going to bring to bear all the resources necessary to achieve justice in this case. And that means that we won't leave any resources on the sideline as we pursue justice. I've had an excellent conversation with Mr. Freeman, and we will be working together. This case is unusual because of the way that Mr. Floyd was killed and who did it. At the hands of the defendant, who was a Minneapolis police officer. But it is not unusual in the sense that the Attorney General's office handles criminal cases and works with counties all the time. This is not something that we're not used to. We have a criminal division of highly competent prosecutors that I have tremendous confidence in. And we have talked, we believe we have the capability, and we'll work with our counterparts in Hennepin County to make sure that justice is achieved. Now, if I may, I'd like to just anticipate a few questions. Tonight, we're not prepared to talk about what the charges are going to be, who's going to be charged. It's just too early to discuss that matter. Tonight, we are announcing our role in this case, and we'll begin the very earnest process immediately, and have already begun to do so. Let me also note a dose of reality. Prosecuting police officers for misconduct, including homicide, murder, is very difficult. And if you look at the cases that have been in front of the public over the last many years, it's easy to see that that is true. Every single link in the prosecutorial chain will come under attack as we present this case to a jury or a fact finder, and we need to make sure that we are absolutely prepared. We intend to be absolutely prepared. And so I just want to let the public know that we are pursuing justice, we are pursuing truth, we're doing it vigorously, and we are pursuing accountability. But I will be asking for your trust, because certainly some people will want to know every single detail that we're working on. We will not be able to share that with you. But I want to let you know, and I want to ask you for your trust, that we are pursuing justice, we are pursuing it relentlessly, and we are pursuing it on behalf of the people of the state of Minnesota. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Harrington, go right ahead.
Thank you, sir. I'm John Harrington, the Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety. We'll give you a little background on how this day started and speak a little bit to the near tragedy of the tanker truck almost running over folks on 35W. At the end of last night, we checked in to see how things had gone with our overnight approach to keeping the peace in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and we noted that we had made about 143 arrests. We also noted some other trends that we mentioned earlier today. Noted the organizations of these riots, and I really do once again call them riots, and I differentiate them from the peaceful protests that we've been seeing today. People coming to express their First Amendment rights, coming to express their remorse about the death of George Floyd, people coming to talk about racism and about police brutality. Part of the trend line that we've been checking is that we've been noticing that as we had talked about our desire to reduce fires, we are now finding caches of incendiaries all over the metro area and in greater Minnesota, adjacent to spots where fires had been set or where we'd had large riotous confrontations. Bottles of gasoline, bottles of oil and gasoline mixed and preset into grassy areas or hidden in boxes immediately adjacent to areas where we have seen a number of the fires and a number of the arsons. We've also continued to note the presence of what we believe to be a cache of stolen vehicles with the plates removed that are being used to transport these flammables. We are seeing the proceeds from some of the looting and also other weapons, including rocks and other projectiles that we have seen there. As we prepared for today, we prepared with some thought about how we thought tonight might go, and as a part of that, we brought forth a recommendation for the curfew that had been very successfully used yesterday to be extended through tonight. So the curfew will be extended tonight from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. on Monday. And you can expect that officers will be, in fact, enforcing the curfew tonight. Again, I will ask you, no, I will beg you, please stay home. Please stay with your businesses. Please stay with your families. Please do not go out and about. Please do not go for walkabout or anything else. What we want you to do is we want you to be safe. And the safest place for you tonight, in this very troubling time, as we're finding incendiaries, we're finding weapons, we're seeing folks driving around with vehicles that clearly are set up to avoid detection and avoid contact with the police. The safest place for you is at home, and that is what we're asking the public to do. This afternoon, as we prepared for our officers to go out, we staged a similar number of officers we had yesterday. We have rapid response teams that are out already, And you would have seen that if you were watching the video about the tanker truck, because we were able, in no small part, to get to the tanker truck as quickly as we could because we had bike officers and we had rapid response teams out there. In addition to that, we have mobile field force teams that are also out and tonight in case that we do run into a major confrontation with a significant body of people that want to riot. Once again, I think that's an important distinction. We are out to stop criminal behavior. We are out to keep the peace. But given the curfew, we want everyone to stay home, which will make it far simpler for first responders, fire, police, and medics to take an appropriate action with that. This afternoon, as we were gearing up, we saw a tanker truck, and I do not have the owner or the name of the tanker truck yet. I'm waiting for that. Literally drive through what we believe, we were estimating a crowd of between 5,000 and 6,000 protesters, demonstrators who were at U.S. Bank Stadium. They had moved on to 35W, and as we did yesterday, we had shut down the freeway because we wanted to keep these protesters safe. We have recognized that having people on the freeway is a hazardous place for them to be. And so one of the things that we have learned over the years is that by shutting down the freeway, we put them in a place where it will be safe, or at least safer, to get them to move as they demonstrate and have it done in a safe way. In the midst of that crowd, the truck drove through at high speeds, was chased down by protesters, and the truck stopped. The driver was taken out of the truck by the protesters, and he was then taken to Hennepin County Medical Center, as I understand it, or to the closest available medical center for injuries sustained. While at the medical center, he is being taken into custody. The Minnesota State Patrol and the BCA are jointly investigating this case as a criminal matter. And we will have more information about the who and the what and the where and all the rest of that as it further develops. In closing, I want to just say one more time, the curfew starts tonight at 8 o'clock. We have been working with community groups all over the Twin Cities, Native American community groups, Somali community groups, African American church leaders. We have been talking to community leaders throughout the Twin Cities area, and they have been helping us get the word out that the curfew has been continued for another night. Please, if you hear me, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your young ones that the best place for them tonight is at home with them, where they will be safe. At this time, we'll introduce Major General John Jensen of the Minnesota National Guard.
Good evening, everybody. Major General John Jensen, I apologize. My throat's a little sore today. I spent most of the day traveling through Minneapolis, St. Paul, visiting my soldiers and my airmen, and spent a long day encouraging them, thanking them, and just generally having conversation with them. Today and through tonight, the Minnesota National Guard will be on 29 missions, and we have 2 that are currently pending. The vast majority of these missions, of course, are in Minneapolis and St. Paul, but in coordination with the Department of Public Safety, we're also conducting operations in Brooklyn Center, Eagan, and Bloomington. The Brooklyn Center one I'd like to highlight very quickly because it's a very unique mission for us at this point. In Brooklyn Center, we are assisting the Red Cross in a shelter-in-place facility for people who have been displaced due to the protests and demonstrations. My second and my last item for tonight is just a point of clarification to clear up what has been shown on recent media posts that I've seen, and it deals with
we must protect
immediate.
so we can provide for us. We know it's not perfect, but if it gets destroyed, we are all left to pick up the pieces. In this city, we care for each other. We've seen that over and over again. This is a time for us to unite. We have to turn our pain into purpose in order to get through this moment together and do the work needed to unite our city and move us forward in a way that is more equitable, inclusive, and just. And I hope that you will join me today, all over Chicago, at 5 p.m. for a moment of silence, for a moment to reflect on what we have lost, but also to reflect on what we have gained. I know in my heart, in my soul, that we will be able to learn from this moment and move forward together. That is who we are as a city. That is the values that we share. And we must never forget our sense of who we are as Chicagoans and as a city, our sense of community. This is what will carry us through.
Now that you've seen the Carvana app, any questions?
Yes, hi, Dave Samuels here. You're telling me I can buy a car entirely
schools gathering and helping out folks. And then my wife Gwen and I were down on Lake Street this morning to watch and look at people coming out to help their neighbors, scrubbing graffiti and sweeping and cleaning and showing the pride in their community and the support they had. So Minnesotans, that part of us is there, and it is there strongly. I would ask again to make the case. This is not done yet with those who seek to disrupt. We're asking you once again to please stay home. Please, by 8 o'clock, get off the streets, get home. Please assist and allow our folks to make sure those people who have placed those flammables around and mean to do damage to us are not allowed to do so. And let's move another step forward towards that healing. At this time, any of us would be glad to answer questions. Yes, ma'am.
On the flammables, are you still finding that it already burned, or you found some in new areas that had not been set a fire yet?
So the question about where we're finding flammables, we have found them in areas that were having heated protests, for a bad word, where there were protests last night. We found them in neighborhoods over in the Lake Street area where there had already been fires over the last several days. And we have seen them in cars that we've stopped as recently as this morning. So we're finding them in caches that look like they may have been planted a little while ago, maybe 3-4 days ago. And then we're finding them in some places where it really looks like this is within the last 24 hours or more recently than that even in terms of where we're finding them.
And then on the truck, do you know yet where, how and where it got onto the freeway?
The MnDOT cameras, as best as we can determine, the truck was on the freeway already as we were closing the freeway. So it does not appear from the cameras that we've seen that it went around any barricades or went through any barricades. So our best estimation at this point, it's really early in looking back at the video, is that it was on the freeway when it was, but that does not in any way absolve the driver from driving through a crowd of people at speed. That he may have been stuck on a freeway, we certainly would understand, and we would have understood him stopping to get our assistance to get him off of the freeway, or any number of different things that could have been done. That is not, and obviously I'm thinking most people have seen this video, that is not anywhere close to what was done.
We saw something on social media regarding the possibility that there wasn't enough resources to actually stop the semi from getting onto 35. Is that true? Was this a loophole, if you will, a literal break in the barricade that allowed the semi to continue on?
In terms of this being a lack of resources, no. We had more than adequate resources out there. We were shutting down the freeway because we were going to shut down the freeways as we did last night. Later, we moved that in our timeline up, but we had adequate resources that way. That was not the issue at all. And as to more than that, that will be something that the State Patrol and our folks and MnDOT will look at as we reconstruct this case, and we'll look at the video and get more detailed information, and we'll have more once we've done that.
The injury sustained that you mentioned, was that related at all to the driver being pulled out of the cab and possibly attacked by any of the group there, or what were the injuries? Was it related to the abrupt stop on the bridge? How did he actually get those injuries?
I do not have that information at this time, but we will certainly get that information for you. But at this time, all we know is that he was injured, and it was deemed the appropriate EMS response to take him to a close hospital. But the fact that he has already been released from medical custody at that point tells me that the injuries are not life-threatening, and because if he was in serious or critical condition, I would expect he would still be in medical care.
Regarding injuries in general, so no one was hit by the truck as it plowed through that crowd?
As far as we could determine from the witnesses and the folks we've talked to, we have not found anybody that's reported an injury to us. I've heard from some of my staff who has been tracking social media that there were possible injuries and people may have been transported by friends or others. But at this point, if they were, they haven't reported to a local hospital because we would have picked up on that. And they haven't reported to State Patrol or local police because we would have gotten wind of that. So at this point, I don't have any information that there were, in fact, injuries.
Do you have information on who the driver is? You have him in custody. What's his name?
I will have that information, but I don't have that information at this time.
What would you say to the, protesters, those who are going to the demonstration during the day, particularly as you're trying to draw that distinction between what is a peaceful protest during the day and what you're asking people to do by going home at night? They thought they were abiding by these rules set forth, and then they ended up being targets themselves. Was there any kind of message that you would share with those Minnesotans that perhaps they need to know as they continue to demonstrate?
I don't have a clear message for that. We respect the First Amendment right. We supported their right to when they were at U.S. Bank Stadium. As I mentioned, anytime anybody walks onto a freeway, it is a dangerous, dangerous thing to do. We recognize that many people have done that as a way of highlighting their need for making sure that their message is noted. But we would never suggest that is a good vehicle. There are better places to make your message known. But irregardless of that, nobody should be run over. Nobody should risk that kind of injury or should have to fear that kind of injury for expressing their First Amendment rights. That's just fundamentally wrong. I've got staff who said this was shades of the case in Charlottesville, that this is what that this reminded them of. Fortunately, at this time, it does not appear to have had the same fatal result. But there's no mincing words around this. A truck at speed, a tanker truck at speed, driving into a crowd. I don't know what his intent was. I don't know. I don't have the information that you're asking about name. But there's just no way for me to see that as being anything other than one of the most dangerous things I've ever seen.
Mr. Floyd's family has rejected the medical examiner's cause of death and are expected to release autopsy report tomorrow. Have you prepared for that? What are you?
I have not. No, on that. That's on the side of the other side of the house from the work in the executive office. So I don't know, and the Attorney General said he's not going to speak on specifics on that. So no, not at this time. It's part of the process.
Question for the Attorney General. If you and Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman disagree on a decision, who gets the final say?
The governor has asked me to take this case, and that's what we're going to do. Okay. I anticipate that we're going to be working constructively together. County Attorney Mike Freeman called me as well. He and I are friends. We have a working relationship, and so I don't anticipate any problems.
But you had the final say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Attorney General, is it possible for you also to please address a picture that has gone somewhat viral on social media with you holding a book that some consider somewhat controversial as you're taking a lead role in this case? Can you address that and what that means?
It means nothing. I mean, look, I was at a bookstore and I saw a book, and it means nothing. It's just a complete diversion, and it's nothing.
One more question for that. Sure. Are you going to release like a full list of folks who have been arrested post curfew and related to this? And then are there folks now who are being held who've been arrested in custody who are not in kind of Ramsey County but are in other places?
The information on who was booked is public information and is available from the county jails where they were booked at. At this point, I had not intended to put together a list of people that were arrested. That might be something, as we're looking at our after-action reports, that might well make some sense. And we have had people that were arrested in Dakota County and in other venues in Oka County. We have been primarily focusing on the Twin Cities, and so Ramsey and Hennepin County have been the jails that we have worked with probably the most extensively. But we do know that individuals have been arrested during the last 5-6 days in other counties in the metro area and in other counties around the state of Minnesota, frankly. So that'll be one of the challenges of trying to give you a comprehensive list that. If they were arrested in Anoka County on Tuesday night, we weren't looking for that particular piece of information at the time, and we'd have to go sort of backwards and retrospectively try and piece together a history. But it does make some sense to try and catalog the arrests, and once that's done, since they're all that information is public data, I don't think we've arrested very many juveniles at this point, aside from those that would have a data practices reason for them being redacted. I would expect that that information is public.
Well, we have looked at those lists, and most of them are from Minnesota. So how does that fit with what you've been telling us that they're from out of state?
I'll take it.
Okay.
Yeah, we addressed the issue this morning. We talked about as this goes in a chaotic situation, more data is coming in. I mentioned the case this morning that as we find out where folks are from, that's where they're from. It doesn't excuse the behavior. It doesn't change anything. We're not trying to set a narrative. I mentioned this morning very candidly that I think the ability, first of all, to watch this, to believe it is find it hard to believe that our own people would burn our buildings, burn down and ruin our businesses that are decades in the making, threaten the safety of their neighbors. But wherever they're from, they're doing that type of behavior. So I'll keep going. We'll get you that out. There's not a narrative here other than if you're doing something illegally, you shouldn't be doing it. And when this data is coming in, we will try and update it as quickly as possible. What I would tell Minnesotans is you've proven this. You've proven that if we do this and we lift up our voices in a horrific situation, we need to listen. We need to hear that. Today, we heard you loud and clear. My expectations are we have the best person with Attorney General Ellison to prosecute this case. The justice system will work its way out. The conclusion will be the one that we base our system on, which is fairness, and then the justice is doled out. What cannot take away from these messages is firebombs being thrown on our businesses by people running rampant at a time to instill fear into us. And this is where the social compact is coming back. We are squeezing them out. That peaceful crowd today had to jump in fear for their lives, and subduing that truck with the help of law enforcement made sure the person who was trying to hurt peaceful protesters is in police custody and will be charged to the fullest extent that we can do. So I ask you all, you've seen it in your streets last night. When we do this right, when we communicate together, and I understand the fear, I understand the mistrust, we're hearing it loud and clear. I understand the results of that was played out horrifically in the murder of George Floyd. But we do this right together and we get a change. So I'm going to ask you, we're about 30 minutes away from asking you on this night to create more space for this positive dialogue and changes. Create more space to show community. Create more space for us to continue to rebuild trust rebuild our community. The team here at the State's Emergency Operations Center will continue to update throughout the night for the media, and I would ask each of you, again, parents, call your children, friends, call your other friends, go home tonight, and let's gather again tomorrow and bring about more positive change. Thank you.
And should more be done about the cars driving around without license plates? Should more of them be getting pulled over? Do we have a new plan with that?
John, you want to answer that one on the end? It's an operational question, so.
And Governor will be there. Thank you all.
Sure. We have flagged that for all the police chiefs and all the sheriffs in the state of Minnesota, and we are also sharing it with the chiefs of police and the public safety centers in our adjoining states to see if there is a pattern here. We are beginning to track those cars that we have stopped and that we have towed in to try and see if there is a nexus in terms of where they were stolen, whether we can find any physical evidence that helps us link these together. The fact that we've seen so many of them in so many places now makes us believe that this is part of that pattern that shows that this is, in fact, an organized activity and not some random act of rage.
So if you see them, you're pulling them over?
We see them, we're pulling them over. This morning, Bloomington pulled over, and as I said, the odd piece, that one was, as he got out, he pulled out a gasoline can and doused the car himself and tried to light the car on fire, which is not something you see on most traffic stops, frankly. So,
Commissioner, can I ask one more question about this? Is there any new updates on what you're finding with more arrests, with more of these stops, and the groups involved, the people involved that are driving this, the specific groups that are organizing these agitators?
I'm not sure if I really understand your question, so if you could just restate it.
There have been reports of different kind of online groups organizing, whether they're right-wing extremists, other groups. The president has suggested Antifa is involved. What do you know about who is coming to town? Who is doing this?
What I know is there's a lot of rumors and there's a lot of stuff up on social media, and that we are feeding that to our intelligence units to try and see if we can validate or vet any of those things. And at this point, I don't have any credible evidence of any specific group being here in Minnesota. I have lots of people calling me to say, "Have you heard?" But I haven't had anybody that can actually bring me any evidence either through social media or through information that actually validates that or makes that a credible piece of information.
All right, I've got to get the commissioner back to command. Thank you, everybody.
Commissioner, maybe Teddy can even answer this. We're going to just questions from other reporters about gassing protesters as they were en route that they were turning away. We can just because I want to be able to represent their questions.
Sure. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, you're just hearing the state officials wrap up a press conference. Several big headlines coming out of this latest presser relating both to what happened on 35W and the criminal case against the former police officer who held his knee on George Floyd's neck. The big headline in that criminal case is something that protesters had been asking for. They had been saying, fire Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman, make him resign. They were asking for that level of measure. Instead of doing that, obviously, they decided to put Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison in charge of the criminal prosecution of the former police officer believed to be responsible for George Floyd's death. I only say believed to be because he hasn't been proven guilty yet. We've all seen the videotape. So we know it was definitely that officer who had his knee on his neck. An attempt for sure to show people that they are trying to be fair in this process, but at the same time, the Attorney General trying to tamp down expectations from people, saying, we know you're going to want every single detail all the time, and we're just not going to be able to give that to you. This is a complicated process. But that was definitely an olive branch to protesters saying, we do not want Mike Freeman prosecuting this case.
And just to add to that, this morning the governor was asked about this and said that George Floyd's siblings had requested to the governor that A.G. Ellison take over this case, and there were a number of lawmakers as well that had contacted the governor about this. So, as you heard, Mr. Ellison is going to be working with Mike Freeman to prosecute this
Yep,
case.
I think they're being politically correct.
Mr. Ellison's
Definitely
in charge.
Ellison has taken
Yeah,
over this
yeah,
case.
yeah, no-
The other big headline for me, Randy, that I found really interesting was that the Minnesota National Guard and the Department of Public Safety, they have been finding flammables that have been clearly planted places around the Twin Cities. Some look like they've been there for days, some look like they just were planted 24 hours ago, but that definitely leads credence to the observations that officials have made earlier that said these riots have been highly organized and planned in advance. This was not something that they felt was spontaneous and homegrown, despite the fact that a lot of the arrests that have been made so far, the people claim to be from Minnesota, or maybe they're people from Minnesota planting these flammables. But it really adds to that narrative that there are people here intent on social disruption and really burning the city down. So I thought that was an interesting update as well.
And of course, the last bit of tidbit here is that truck driver that plowed through those protesters, from what we understand, nobody was hit or seriously injured. He was pulled out of that cab. He was injured by protesters. He was handed over to police. He was taken to the hospital. His injuries are non-life-threatening. He is now out of HCMC and in police custody. Let's go to Boyd Hooper now and get an update on the scene. We've been away for about 40 minutes right now. Boyd, give us an update.
Yeah, Randy, this freeway is kind of an interesting situation right now. I'm talking about 35W northbound lanes. Just before you would get onto the 35W bridge, a few hundred feet down from where that truck barreled into the crowd of protesters not too long ago. But this is what we're looking at now. This is a line of law enforcement officers that had been standing in front of an empty freeway, and a group of protesters has made its way back down the ramp and onto the freeway, and they've continued to creep closer until now you can see several are just a few feet away from the officers. There was a group of about 30 protesters, maybe 30 to 40, who were in that group about 15 minutes ago, and you can see that there's now a long line of other officers along the concrete barriers separating the lanes of the freeway. And as those officers went into place, everybody scattered. Nobody wanted to stay there and get arrested, but they've gradually been working up their nerve, and a number of them have come back onto the freeway. Interesting to watch this play out. We're about 20 minutes from the curfew, and once that happens, these protesters will be in violation of the curfew. So we'll have to wait and see what the outcome of this is. I've seen these sorts of things play out before at past demonstrations, and often officers will give them a few opportunities to disperse. But when they make the decision to arrest, it is swift, and there's not really much opportunity to escape after that. The officers are generally fairly patient with this sort of thing, but when it happens quickly.
Boyd, thank you very much. We've been obviously away from the scene for 40 minutes for the governor's news conference. Andy McDonald was up on University Avenue in that area when all of this took place. Andy, can you give us an update on your location?
All right, so they just want us to get a shot up, ASAP,
Okay.
and then we'll.
Let's, apparently, there we go. Now, there he is. Go ahead, Andy. I think we're having
University Avenue,
there we
there's a line of police cars behind me, right behind me, obviously waiting for the 8 p.m. curfew to go into effect. There are probably 150 to 200 people still kind of milling around in this area between 5 or 6 blocks in both directions. But as you can see behind me, the on-ramp to 35W South is blocked off. I haven't seen anyone on the highway, on that side of the highway, in quite a while. Last hour or so. Obviously everything's calmed down, but the line of police cars behind me with that 8 p.m. curfew, like Boyd was talking about, it could have some arrests because there are people still out here on there. There's police cars out here. Obviously, people are going to be asked to go home at 8 p.m. That's when the curfew goes into effect. But like Boyd said, it's going to be interesting to see how everything goes down like it happened.
And that's where the police are set up to your left is heading towards the University of Minnesota. Can your camera person pan back down University towards the university? Because I'm assuming that's where most of the people are, either next to you or heading down that direction. Can you give us an estimate? Yeah, there we go. Can you give us an estimate of how many people you can tell from your vantage point or down that way?
Yeah, there's probably 75 to 100 on the overpass right now, and people are on the other side are basically just walking away, I assume, probably for the curfew. Behind me, though, closer the other way from the University of Minnesota, you can see there's still probably 25 people here on each corner.
And traffic is moving.
So it's not a very dense crowd.
The
University
University
There's
Avenue
been
is
traffic
open
moving
for
through
traffic,
here for the last 30 minutes or so.
Last 30 minutes, okay. All right. Andy, we would like you to keep an eye on that. If you can, let's toss back to Boyd Hoopert now with more from his view of 35W. Boyd?
Yeah, Randy, this is really going to be interesting to see how this plays out. The officers who are lined up on the bridge, we believe they're state troopers, though not 100% sure of that. They are allowing these protesters to come down the ramp and are pretty much up in their grills at this point. But we've also noticed the arrival of some squad cars, and often when we see squad cars arrive, that means they're preparing to take people into custody. And those state patrol cars are now lined up on the other side of the concrete barriers. So as we noted earlier, the curfew is now just a little over 15 minutes away, and those demonstrators will be in violation of the curfew at that point, and obviously in close proximity to some officers who, for now, are letting them stand there. But we'll see what happens.
Boyd, are you too far
as
away?
this develops? And we sent some.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Randy.
I was just going to ask, are you too far away to be able to hear any, maybe an announcement by law enforcement there to, have you heard anything audibly? I mean, we can see everything. Have you heard anything?
Yeah, I will hear it when it happens, and we will be able to hear it. I'm confident. I can hear even some of the protesters who are chanting "Hands up, don't shoot" from time to time. So we'll hear that when that announcement is made, and I haven't heard it made yet. While we've been out here, and I don't know if we've had a chance to talk about it yet on air, but that video that we were able to collect from a witness that I tweeted in a while ago. Randy, have you had a chance to look at that on air yet?
You know what, Boyd? We were at the news conference listening to the governor. Maybe this is it right here. Oh, yeah, we are seeing it right now. Shot at a distance, hard to see only because there's a crowd from the southbound 35 kind of in the view. It's a little hard to see.
Yeah, what I think it speaks to better than any of the other video clips that I've seen, what it speaks to is the speed.
Yep,
and,
absolutely.
You know, I heard several witnesses out here who've said, you know, the truck was going 50, 60 miles an hour, and there's almost a disbelief. Well, how could anybody be so reckless? But then when you see the video, it made me gasp. Wow. Because that's what it looks like to me, too, in that speed.
What we don't
in
see...
that video is that looks like freeway speed.
Right. And what we don't see, though, is where the truck is in reference to the protesters on that side of the interstate. You know what I mean? We don't see where the protesting line would start relative to where the truck is.
Yeah, I have a little better perspective of that because I'm up on a roof and I can see landmarks in that video.
Yeah.
And he was way too close to those protesters to be going that fast.
And you consider how heavy that truck would be.
It just corroborates what.
Go ahead, sorry, Boyd.
Right, and it corroborates everything that the witnesses here told me. You know, I always look for the good in people, and I have a hard time imagining that somebody would intentionally be that reckless. But to hear the witnesses and then to see that video, I mean, I don't know how else you describe that, but a reckless act.
Yeah,
Regardless of what you think about the people
understand.
on the bridge, it's just a reckless
Absolutely.
act.
Absolutely. Boyd,
to be going that.
to be going that fast with that many people in front of you. Thank you so much, Boyd. We appreciate
Yep.
it. We're going to jump
Exactly.
over to Lauren Lemanchuk right now, who is live in downtown with marchers, it appears. Where are you exactly, Lauren?
Yeah. Julie, we just left U.S. Bank Stadium. We're now marching down Washington Avenue. I'm going to let you take a look. It's a really large group here. It appears that they regrouped at U.S. Bank Stadium just as we arrived downtown. That's where they were, and then they started walking this way. You can see we're walking past the Aloft W Hotel there, back toward the highway. You can see that Courtyard Hotel in the distance, so some landmarks there for you. I have not been able to talk to the protesters about where they're planning on going. It's clear that they have no intention of going home at 8 o'clock. But they are walking, shouting no justice, no peace. As you can hear, the cars going by honking at them with their own signs, say his name. So the protest that was going on before really has just moved here. It's a large group. It's getting bigger. More people are coming to join the protest. And again, I don't know what the ultimate plan is. I don't know that there is one, but I do know that they are out here saying no justice, no peace, chanting, talking about George Floyd, and certainly not deterred by what happened earlier today.
All right, Lauren, thank you so much. You know, it's interesting because we had heard yesterday, Randy, that there were going to be tens of thousands of people protesting, marching, and rallying in downtown Minneapolis, and we didn't see it. And today is the day they had tens of thousands of people. And again, curfew is in about 10 minutes, and there are thousands of people out on the streets right now, still at this moment.
If I got my bearings right, where Lauren was talking, it sounded like they're attempting to do kind of that same loop. Start at U.S. Bank, head down Washington, down towards Hennepin Government Center, Hennepin Avenue Bridge, the same loop that we saw earlier in the day.
Randy, when we were talking about what happened on that, when we were listening in rather to the press conference about what happened on 35W with that semi, both of us looked at each other confused because the commissioner was saying they were in the process maybe of shutting the interstate down at the moment that semi went by.
That just doesn't make any sense because that incident, and I don't know the exact time, and maybe one of our producers knows the exact time. I didn't write it down, unfortunately, but I know that was long after 5 o'clock.
Correct.
I mean, that had to be at least
5:45. One of the witnesses said
5:45. That's 45 minutes after, you know, most of the, and we didn't see any other. Here's the other part of that. I don't recall, as we were watching that video from up top, any other vehicles attempting to move through the crowd on the northbound side for a long time. Both sides of that interstate were full of people without, certainly not coming from the south, heading south, but really nothing heading north, you know, like where cars were stopped or pulled off to the side until we saw that truck. So I'm like you, really am confused as to how that truck got on 35. Obviously, if he had breached a line of security, they would have said something. I'm assuming they would have said something about it. Here's video right now of this incident. If you haven't seen it already, people just scrambling to get out of the way. That's a truck. You can hear the horn. That's the truck heading northbound and then being stopped by the protesters.
Yeah, and then we watched as we watched from Sky 11 as people crowded around the cab of the truck, and I think you'll see some of that here. We have vetted all of these before we air them, just so you know. But they start crawling on the cab of the truck, and we can see that door open and close to the cab. The fact that he's already out of the hospital, the driver of this truck, without more serious injuries is truly amazing.
But as you said, and you were correct, it looked like people were trying to protect him as well. Some people pulled him out, and we both kind of said, it looks like people are trying to keep people back. You know, at the time,
and an eyewitness had said that as well.
Yeah, at the time we weren't sure if they were trying to protect the driver or just keep other people out of the mix. That video that we just showed right there, the traffic cam video, he's moving at a high rate of speed, but look how long it takes. I mean, people cleared out pretty fast.
It's amazing.
To get out of the way, and you know, I guess I attribute that to him blaring his horn. And I will make, if you run that video one more time, I will make the comment I said earlier, you know, if he really wanted to hurt people, he could have turned that truck left or right into the crowds as they scattered one direction or the other. He stayed right down the middle of that lane, and I'm not making an
Hard to know
excuse
his
either way.
motives.
Yeah,
Absolutely impossible to understand why
Yeah.
someone would do that.
Absolutely.
I'm sure those details will come out later. Apparently, from Sky 11, we're seeing another incident
Where's this?
unfolding.
Do we know?
And
Okay.
we're going to find out for you where this is. Obviously, a car being surrounded by what appear to be protesters. We don't know what precipitated this, but another scene going down that looks like it could be tense, and we don't see any
Is
officers
this downtown?
on the scene
Ellie?
yet.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we're not quite sure what this is exactly. Obviously, there's a reason people are around this vehicle.
You know, Randy, it occurs to me we're 9 minutes away from curfew, and every shot we're taking here, whether it's Lauren Lemanchek, who we'll go back to shortly, there's still a lot of people out on the streets tonight, and the curfew is still in effect because our governor believes there is still a very real threat of violence again tonight. So last night we saw such a huge law enforcement presence that there were not significant fires or looting last night, but they believe it's still a very real possibility tonight, which is why they shut down the interstates again and they enacted the curfew again tonight. So this is a situation that they're not going to want to see happening. Last night they did a great job of taking those crowds and getting them broken up so that there were not too big of a gathering in any one place.
I'm being told this is the 35W, maybe the overpass over 35W. Is that what we're looking at? See a gas station there on the right. I'm sorry, I'm not too. Well, if that's 35 right there, then that would be Bobby
Right
and
before the
Steve's.
overpass,
That would be
right?
Bobby and Steve's there to the right, if that's my bearings are correct. Yeah, that's it. All right, let's go to Lauren. Lauren? Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm not sure if you were just trying to call for me. My IFB is going in and out. Sorry about that. My earpiece is going in and out. Yeah, that video you were just looking at, that's where we are. This large group of protesters walking right there over the bridge, the overpass for 35W. And so far it has been a peaceful crowd. Obviously, it's,
What's going
almost
on
8
up there,
o'clock. They have no
Lauren? Do you
intention
know?
of going home right now.
Lauren,
and there's a
what's going on up there?
ton of traffic. We don't know. We're just
Okay.
Randy, we're walking this way. We have not been up there. We are following the protesters, and we are getting there as they are. So,
just so
we
you-
can check into it and get back to you on that. But you can see they've stopped. Yeah.
I just want to give you a heads up.
Go ahead, Randy.
We were just watching this via Sky 11, and it looked like they were around a car, but maybe the car just got stopped because there's so many people up there, and there's not an incident. So I'm just giving you a heads up. That's kind of what we were looking at as you approach up there.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, we don't know. It doesn't seem like too much commotion,
Peaceful?
but we are going to look right now what's going on here. We're going to try and get up. So far, it's been peaceful. We've been walking with them. There's been no damage, no destruction. They're trying to get down on the highway, it looks like. They're heading onto the 35W South ramp right now.
Okay.
You know, Randy and Julie, I'm amazed at how many cars are out here on the
That's
road.
what-
There is a ton of traffic here, and they are mixed in with these protesters who are trying to get down on the highway.
Yeah, we saw that University Avenue was open. and
Randy, I
allowing
think you were,
traffic.
yeah.
Allowing traffic to go through. You're on Washington Avenue there, correct? That's where you are.
Yes, we're on Washington Avenue. We walked, through the North Loop from US Bank Stadium with them. And, I'm going to step aside and let you see Adam's camera here. Everyone's just heading right back down onto the freeway. So certainly, as I said before, they are not deterred by what happened earlier. And we're going to stick with this, Randy. We're just going to kind of see what happens here, because right now we're just trying to get a lay of the land.
All right, thanks, Lauren. We'll let you gather some more information. And now let's go over to Danny Spiewak, who has been in St. Paul. He's live now at the state capitol. Danny, what's the scene there?
Yeah, Julie, just a couple of minutes until curfew, and we just heard the emergency alert go off on everybody's phones. But right now, we still have a group of people that are standing just feet from the huge law enforcement presence, the National Guard with tanks. It looks like people may have put some things on the tanks. It's kind of hard to tell from here exactly what's going on. Huge state patrol presence. People are guarding the top of the building. And so it is going to be really interesting to see what happens at 8 o'clock. I just had an activist that I know come up to me, was extremely upset that there are still people here. We've seen a lot of people go home, to be clear. A lot of people, because it's 8 o'clock, you can see them starting to leave. There are people that are abiding by the curfew. They wanted to spend as much time as they could protesting before the curfew, but it does appear that there are people that are not going to leave. So we just don't know what law enforcement is going to do to respond after 8 o'clock, how long they'll wait. But again, you can see this is just a surreal scene to see tanks in front of the Minnesota State Capitol. And at 8 o'clock, it will be illegal by order of the state for anybody to be out in public. So we're just going to try to keep our distance a little bit, see what happens, and see just how law enforcement are going to deal with this situation.
All right, thank you so much, Danny. We just received word from the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. They just tweeted out, State Patrol troopers and the Minneapolis PD are working to clear the area of the I-35W River Bridge between Washington and University Avenues. If people do not clear, police may use tear gas as a dispersal mechanism. So they're warning people in that area. They want to clear it out, and if it doesn't get cleared out, they will begin using tear gas. That was tweeted out just a minute ago.
Are we going to go back to Lauren? I guess I'm a little confused. Okay, thank you. Lauren was up there on Washington Avenue and that bridge overpass that goes over 35, talking about how people were maybe attempting to go back down on 35W. We've seen a lot of traffic that was stopped up on that bridge. Not sure if it's people driving there to watch or if they just got caught in traffic. All right, let's go back to Lauren. Lauren?
Hi, Randy. Yeah, so we are here. People obviously have made their way down onto 35W. I just heard someone coming down saying that was an attempted murder. They tried to kill us. So a lot of people here are folks who were down on that highway before when that truck came through. They very much feel as though they were targeted, that was an attempted homicide against them. And now they're headed back onto that highway. It certainly has done nothing to keep them away from this highway. In fact, it seems, and I've only talked to a few, but for them, it has made them want to get down there more. Again, it'll be interesting to see what methods or tactics the police take here. I know you were just mentioning some information from the State Patrol, and I'll have to look into that. But, this is a crowd that has no intention of leaving here tonight. No intention of leaving here at 8 p.m. They have thus far been incredibly peaceful. There has been nothing broken as we've walked down Washington Avenue. There has been nothing really, no harassment from people. They've tried to let cars through, but right now they are on this highway. They are blocking the highway at 35W, and as I said, there's no intention of getting off anytime soon.
Lauren, thank you so much for your reporting. We appreciate it. And we know it's going to become a tense situation.
Can you hear me, Randy and Julie? Are you?
Yep, thank you, Lauren. We appreciate it. We know it could become tense very quickly, already is becoming tense, because they will start deploying tear gas in that area if they don't start to move out. You can see lots of cars now as well, kind of stuck in that area.
That's where Lauren was standing there on that bridge, that overpass there, Washington Avenue. It is basically 8 o'clock. So the curfew in Minneapolis and St. Paul is in effect. The highways surrounding the metro were shut down, according to the Department of Transportation, at 5 o'clock, 3 hours earlier than what they had previously tweeted out today. And we saw last night that was done effectively by law enforcement to allow them to get back and forth quickly from place to place, and not allow people to get into the Twin Cities, at least not allow them to easy access into the Twin Cities. But you're right, we're now starting to see things maybe getting a little bit more tense here as they announced to this crowd that the curfew, you're violating the curfew at this point.
And we should point out as well, there are a lot bigger crowds out today at curfew than there were last night. We heard from the governor, or perhaps it was the commissioner of the Department of Public Safety, that said there were tens of thousands of protesters who were out and about today peacefully rallying. Right now we have on the phone Brigadier General Michael Wickman, who's joining us to talk a little bit about their role in gaining order and maintaining order in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Thanks so much for joining us, sir.
Of course. Good evening.
Good evening. How are your men and women doing?
They're doing well. In fact, I spent the morning with the Adjutant General, General John Jensen, spending some time out with the soldiers and airmen today, and they are all in good high spirits, and they are really eager to perform missions.
Can you explain to us the mission that they have been tasked with? Obviously, without giving up classified information that we don't want out, but what is their specific mission?
Oh, okay. So it's the missions themselves are not classified. There's just quite a few of them, and so the focus tends to be around providing assistance to law enforcement. And so you'll find soldiers and airmen performing escort for ambulances, for fire trucks. You're providing security to infrastructure installations, for example, a hospital. They also are partnered with local law enforcement, and so they will assist with civil disturbances. And so there currently are 20 missions going on for the division, the 34th Infantry Division forces, but a total of 27 for the whole Minnesota National Guard.
And how many Guards men and women will be deployed tonight throughout the Twin Cities?
Well, that's subject to change, but they're currently over 500 now conducting missions.
And is that similar to last night?
It is similar to last night as of now. It is as you can see, it's quite a kind of an ambiguous, volatile situation, and so the missions do come and go quite quickly.
I want to ask a question on behalf of people who don't live in Minneapolis and St. Paul. There's been a lot of fear, of course, throughout the entire metro area. People worried that all of this violence would spill over into their towns. How quickly would you be able to move, for example, from a downtown Minneapolis to outlying areas?
Very quickly. The forces for the Minnesota National Guard are really spread out throughout the metro area and outside of Minneapolis, St. Paul proper. And so they are on highway locations that would facilitate quick movement. And after the last few days, there's been a great deal of comfort developed by the forces to execute missions on a relatively quick basis. And so I would say that, as you may have seen with what happened with the truck, they were there relatively quickly. And so I would say that they should feel very secure that the Minnesota National Guard and local law enforcement would respond in a very quick and efficient manner.
I want to point out, while we're speaking to you, we're watching some images right now on the TV. It appears things are turning tense between State Patrol troopers and protesters in the area. I'm assuming that's 35W.
It is
University
35W.
area.
You're right. There's a rather large crowd that's almost underneath the overpass of Washington Avenue and 35. It's on the other side of that overpass. We can't see them. You see the line of law enforcement there, and you see a bunch of cars and people on that bridge up top. But there is a large presence of protesters on that side. Mr. Wickman, can you just talk a little bit about how do you take care of all these people? It seems like they've been on the job 24/7. I mean, how do you rotate all these people? We marvel at the law enforcement and the firefighters that have been going basically nonstop for the last 3 to 4 days. How does that work? How do you rotate all these people so they don't get burned out?
And that's a great question. And it's, interestingly enough, it's something that I dialogue with the Adjutant General, General Jensen, just recently. And that is a critical thing. It is very important because if you do burn out, you're not able to perform the mission. within the military, it happens to be something that's actually quite regular. So we're used to, even when we perform federal missions, that you operate on a rotational schedule. And so there's really already kind of a built-in comfort level with understanding I'm on shift, I'm off shift. And so we manage that with what we call a shift change brief to ease the continuity between one shift coming on and one shift coming off. And so it really is actually part of the military culture. And so we're quite used to that.
Well, we appreciate your
I just have
time.
one last question for you, sir. We were told in the briefing that the Guard is armed, and that's because there were threats against our National Guard's men and women. Are there several threats? Is it just one? Can you comment on that at all? And then my second part of the question would be, at what point would you be authorized to use force as a Guard member?
So it is. We did receive a credible threat about a week ago through the FBI, and so that is the reason why soldiers are armed, but they have to go through regimented levels of authorization before you would actually be able to engage with your
All right,
weapon.
sir,
And so
sir,
there are many mitigations.
I
I'm sorry, we have
apologize to cut you off. We are going to go to a live breaking scene right now that's really heating up. We just want to say thank you. We appreciate the job that you're doing, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much.
So I think we just saw some tear gas being dispensed.
All right.
Let's go to Boyd.
We're
Boyd?
Randy, we're on top of a parking garage roof. Randy, we're on top of a parking garage roof. The reason that we've ducked down is the authorities down below just shot some sort of a projectile up onto the roof. And so we ducked down. I think we can take a look back over the ledge here, because what's happening down below us is a large group of law enforcement officers have amassed on the freeway. And if you look down the bridge, down the freeway toward the Washington Avenue Bridge, you'll see there was a group of protesters that was approaching from down here. I can see them. There's still some of them have scattered, understandably, but there are still others that are now underneath the bridge deck, and I can see their feet, but not their bodies. So I don't know if their hands are up or if they're getting closer to the officers or farther, but they are vastly outnumbered. Again, here's the line of officers. They have vastly outnumbered the people that I can still see on the freeway, and it would take a very brave soul to approach those officers at this point. They were shooting off some sort of concussion grenades. Again, one of them reached up to the rooftop that we're on, 5 or 6 stories up, which sent most of the people up here scattering. And we did witness, I believe, a couple of arrests. Devin, am I right about that?
Yes, was about 6.
Okay, 5 or 6 arrests. Earlier we showed you the protesters who were nose to nose with this line of officers, and those people have now been arrested and taken into custody. And then the other larger group of protesters that were approaching from up underneath the bridge. This is the southbound lanes. Well, actually, we're crossing both the north and southbound lanes of 35W, not far from the Metrodome, just to get your bearings. Mm-hmm. And it kind of started just as we just as we predicted, right after 8 o'clock. So right after that curfew, the officers started to move. They've been patiently waiting before then.
Boy, we have a bird's eye view of this, or at least we did there for a while. We could see there's a rather decent amount of people on the other side of the Washington Avenue Bridge that are on 35W, both in the northbound and southbound lanes. So as those law enforcement move towards them, there is a fairly decent amount of people there. And there are, from what I saw earlier at least, people up on the bridge itself, and you probably have a better view of that than you do of people on the other side.
Lauren Lemanchek actually is in that area. She can see where you are, Boyd, so we're going to try to get her perspective as well, unless you want to add something quick before we go to her.
No, I was just going to say, Randy, you can see underneath that bridge better than I can.
Yeah.
That's obscured to me now. I'm not seeing anybody on the road, but a large crowd, and I believe you're about to go there to Lauren. There's a large crowd up on the bridge deck, and then just to the west of the bridge.
All right, let's check in with her. Thank you, Boyd. Let's check in with Lauren now so we can see things from her vantage point. Lauren?
Whoa, you just saw more flashbangs. There you go, coming this way. Protesters are moving out. And so here's the thing, protesters are moving out. The last time I spoke with you, they had just been getting on the bridge. I was talking to them when the flashbangs started. And I was talking to a number of them. I asked them, is this gonna deter you? And they said no. They have said this will not deter them. Going to go home because of this. They mentioned how last night it cleared the area, but right now they're saying they are not going to leave. They say that they plan on being peaceful, but I did talk to a woman who said we will fight back. So this is the scene right now. People are starting to leave the area. It's clear the flashbangs are bothering people. We're going to get into the gas station parking lot here. Excuse me, guys. Tear gas coming. All right.
Here's a part of this too that's scary when you look at that. There's cars parked up there. And I guess I'm assuming there's people up on that bridge in those cars as well. And they're trapped. It looks like there's no way for them to get off of that bridge, at least people in the cars.
Well, you know, there's a lot of debate going on about curfew, about being on interstates, about peacefully protesting, about disruptive protesting. People are making decisions tonight for a variety of reasons.
See, that's a dangerous situation, don't you think, Julie? With cars,
Yep, that's
and
right where
people,
Lauren is. So we're
people
hoping
in
that
the
she was
streets,
able to
people
get
panicking, trying to get out of there.
And they have made it abundantly clear, as you see tear gas canisters being thrown toward those crowds, that this is what they are going to do. They have tweeted it out. We're sure they're telling people this with bullhorns in the area. So the people who are staying are making a decision that they are going to stay, despite being warned that this is exactly what is going to happen. The reasons they're deciding to stay, you know, not everyone may agree with, some may agree with, but the fact is this is not happening in a vacuum. And the reason the law enforcement is clearing the area, you may agree with or not agree with, but the message has been relayed that this is going to happen if you do not clear this area. So yes, maybe some people on that bridge that are just caught up in it and can't leave, but if they do successfully clear that area, they would be able to get out of there. And again, today, the governor and the commissioner of public safety begging people, please go home, because at any moment, this can turn into either a situation where they're deploying tear gas canisters, or a situation where things turn violent. And if you're standing next to someone and they start a building on fire, officers have been ordered to find you complicit. So they are trying to get a handle on this before the sun goes down tonight. For sure, you can see crowds there. Yep. I can't tell if they're coming or going on that grassy knoll there by the highway.
It's a little bit, and not to the extent that we saw last night at the 5th Precinct, because that seemed to be a very quick action by law enforcement last night in pushing the protesters out of that area. We haven't seen the law enforcement move like they did last night. And maybe one of the reasons why is you've got that overpass there. And if there's people up there, that's a vantage point that puts those law enforcement at a disadvantage, I would think, in some ways, because not only do they have to look straight ahead, they're going to have to look up as well, and for fear that there might be something up on that bridge. So
well, and we know
it makes it a tough
that,
situation, I think.
We know that the governor has just been saying, please go home, because people are using you as cover if they want to cause harm. The Minnesota Department of Public Safety just tweeted out a question and answer. We saw video last night of officers, and we weren't sure which department they came from. I don't think we've had that confirmed. There were people on a porch. Cops were coming through the road, and they were screaming, get inside, get inside, get inside. People were on their own front porch, did not go inside, and then the officers, it appeared, deployed some sort of tear gas. Forgive me, I can't remember exactly what it was, but they used a non-lethal substance to get them to go inside.
I think it was National Guard that was moving through that neighborhood.
Okay.
If that's the one that we showed last night.
Yes, we did.
Yeah,
People have been
yeah.
sharing it on social media
I
again and
believe it
again
was
and
National
again.
Guard.
And it has raised the question, if you can't be on your front porch, so here's what the Department of Public Safety says for your information tonight, so that you know this. Can I be outside my house on my property after 8 p.m.? The answer is you can be on your porch or in your yard or patio, but if a law enforcement officer or other public safety official asks you to go inside or take any other action, you must follow the instruction. So clearly that message was getting to the Department of Public Safety as well, that this had happened and people were upset about it. And what they're saying is, yes, you have a right to be outside, but when you're asked by law enforcement to move inside, that you are required to do so.
Just for a point of reference, what we were just looking at is Bobby and Steve's, which was on the entrance ramp going south on 35W. We can see a large, fairly large contingent of people up there. The cars up above are starting to clear out, which I think is a good sign, and maybe that's what law enforcement is waiting for before they continue to move in that direction. But correct me if I'm wrong, is that a line of law enforcement on the other side of the overpass as well? Can we pan back left? Right there. Is that, so if that's the case, and it is, they have the protesters on either, like sandwiched in the middle, because all we saw previous was on the other side of Washington Avenue overpass. So, and you can see law enforcement creeping up the entrance ramp, which is going the wrong way, going towards where Bobby and Steve's is located. And so now you see people moving, and you see law enforcement moving in and clearing people out. Lauren, can you join us?
Yeah, I can. I'm just going to step aside and see what they're doing right there. You can see the officers coming up off the bridge. People were still standing here even after the flashbangs and tear gas. And they were, as you guys were here seeing from your overhead view, chanting. The officers are coming off of the bridge now, and they are confronting the crowd. The crowd, you can see, has their hands up, yelling, "Hands up, don't shoot." So they're walking right at the officers who are coming up over the bridge right now. Now, a lot of people did leave the area when the confrontation happened, but as you can see, many of them remain. Some are walking back to the area. As I said, we're live on the air now, sir. As I said just a moment ago, you know, we did talk to people. They said they didn't have an intention of violent confrontation, but they also did not plan on leaving tonight. They were adamant that this is where they were going to be tonight. And that's what's been happening. You can see them there right through. We're at the Bobby and Steve's parking lot, that gas station right at the corner. And so you can see them standing there with their hands up. And that's where we're at right now. You know, where this goes from here, does it escalate? We don't know. That we're waiting like everyone else to see right now. But talking to protesters, they said, listen, we're here for a reason. We believe that our community has been violated time and again, and we are not going to be, they thought, pushed around. But at the same time, I don't know how many of them are willing to truly get into a confrontation with the level of military and police force that is out here today.
Lauren, can you see people that are on that tow truck, on top of the cab of that tow truck? Might be to your right or left there on the street.
Yes, I can.
What's going on there?
Yep.
Are those protesters?
Oh, the tow truck. So I'm seeing the people on the tow truck in the Bobby and Steve's parking lot. Yes, those are those are protesters. They are up there, and they're looking at the situation. I can't really tell if they're doing anything besides just taking cell phone video. There's some media up there too, or someone who appears to have a camera up there. But you know, I'm not seeing any real action up there, just people kind of getting a better vantage point, it seems.
And we're not...
now I can tell you when the tear gas did come and the, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Finish your...
Go ahead, Randy. No, I was just going to say that, you know, it was quite the scene when they did do the tear gas and the flashbangs, and there started to be this confrontation. People were flying off that interstate and jumping over the fence, really running away, but now you can see them moving back toward the area. So they initially dispersed, but now they're right back here at the Washington Avenue Bridge.
All right, let's check in with, thank you so much, Lauren. Stay safe. That's a dicey situation to be in. Yeah. Oh, I apologize. We're just going to take Lauren's shot for a minute while we chat. We are seeing on social media that there are still crowds throughout. This appears to be one of the larger crowds in Minneapolis right now, breaking curfew. Chief Arredondo was out, it appears about 45 minutes ago at 38th in Chicago, talking with those loud crowds. That's been a really peaceful scene so far, but obviously still a lot of people gathered there as well. You can see the presence of the National Guard. It looks like state troopers. And we had seen on the freeway earlier when police were trying to clear that after the semi drove into that crowd of people, that protesters were putting their hands up in the air and walking toward officers. And when they started walking toward the officers, then you could see it here too. A lot of people with their hands in the air, apparently walking toward the officers. Some you can see walking away, but the officers and the Department of Public Safety made it clear that they will use tear gas tonight to disperse crowds.
Andy McDonald is in that area. I think he has a different vantage point right now. Andy?
Hey, Randy. Yeah, I can hear you. Hey, we're down here on Portland Avenue. We walked from the river, and they said they're heading to U.S. Bank Stadium for a silent protest in honor of George Floyd. This is a pretty big crowd. I was previously over at 35W and University, and that crowd had dispersed. So we moved over here. They're going to take a left toward U.S. Bank Stadium. But this is a pretty big crowd here for the march for honoring George Floyd. They're taking a left on 4th Street, heading back to U.S. Bank where this march began. We haven't seen any police around this group of people in the last few blocks. They have just walked through a few lights, but they're heading toward U.S. Bank, and I'm told that by a few protesters that they're doing a silent protest back at U.S. Bank where they started all of this just a few hours ago.
Thank you, Andy. We appreciate it. Let's go back to Lauren where she's located, because that's where things are heating up. Lauren?
Yeah, I just watched those officers up against the fence there here at the gas station, really getting right up there, protesters getting right up there, confronting them. They're here still chanting, say his name, George Floyd, hands up, don't shoot. You can see some of them, it seems like, starting to walk away now, back toward perhaps U.S. Bank Stadium where we came from. There are some still here in the area, but just in the last maybe 30 seconds, it seems as though some are dispersing. I know you guys maybe even have a better vantage point from your bird's eye view.
Yeah,
but here on the ground, people seem to be filtering away. Not everyone, certainly, and you can see the very heavily armed law enforcement and National Guard forces there on the highway on-ramp. But it's really been this holding pattern. They did the flashbangs, they did the tear gas, haven't heard those in a little while. And it's been this holding pattern with the protesters here at the gas station on the flatbeds and the tow trucks, on Washington Avenue, on the bridge, and the officers sort of guarding the on-ramp to the highway. And right now it's just sort of this uneasy tension. Neither one is giving an inch right here, but there hasn't been any more tear gas or any rubber bullets fired or anything like that. So at this point, it's a standstill. And I don't know if they're going to succeed in getting these protesters to move on or go home, but it does seem as though they've succeeded in getting them off of the highway, which was their initial goal.
Lauren,
in terms of whether or not they were staying out past curfew, everyone just started cheering now, and I'm not sure what for, but everyone did just start cheering. Sorry, Julie.
I'm just wondering, have you heard them making an announcement with bullhorns? Have they been saying anything to the crowd?
I haven't heard it, although, it would be very easy for me to miss that. I'm listening to off-air programming, and then I'm also listening to protesters chant, but I haven't heard any announcement that has cut through the crowd and all of the din here that said, get out of here, gave a warning. Again, I can't say that it didn't happen, but I do know it's a noisy crowd, it's a loud crowd, and I have not heard it. Oddly enough, though, it just suddenly became very silent, and I don't know if there's a discussion happening over there. I'd have to get closer to find out, but it seems like something is happening, although because the crowd just became incredibly silent, and the police officers and the state patrol are just standing their ground. So I'm not sure. Again, a bird's eye view may be better from there, but on the ground, it's the standstill. No one's giving an inch here.
And Lauren, you haven't seen any destruction of property. We had seen people crawling up on what appeared to be a Bobby and Steve's tow truck, but they're not damaging anything there that you can see?
No, I haven't seen any destruction of property. We walked all the way up. No, you can see right here. Here they are on the tow truck. What they're basically doing is looking to get a better vantage point, it seems like. People have their cell phones out, and so just kind of that natural reaction to try and get to higher ground and see what's happening. We did march all the way from U.S. Bank Stadium to here, the Washington Avenue Bridge with them. There was no attempt to damage any property or interfere with any cars or anything like that. They claimed it was going to be a peaceful protest. So far, that's what this has been. There hasn't been any damage that we've seen. And now they're in this standoff with police here. at the Washington Avenue Bridge.
All right, Lauren, we appreciate your perspective. Any way you can estimate how many people are there right now? I know we have a bird's eye view, but it's hard to tell either.
Oh, for me, it really is challenging because I'm not sure how many people got off of the highway and how many people didn't. As I stand here looking down the street, a couple hundred, maybe 150. It's not a massive crowd. We're not talking about thousands, but I would say it's not my strong point is estimating numbers. But it's not a massive 1,000-person crowd, but there's a lot of people out there.
Yeah. There is still a police presence on the interstate, on the opposite side of where you are, and they haven't moved very much. We are seeing a bird's eye view from our chopper of Bobby and Steve's, and it's a pretty good sized crowd, as you said. It's probably about 100, 150 people. A few cars that are stopped up on the roads, whether they are intentionally stopped there or whatever, but for right now, just a holding pattern, it looks like.
Yeah, there were a few cars that were going along with the crowd and sort of seemed to be part of it. They had signs, they would be sitting out the window chanting along with the crowd cheering, and there's a few of them that are stopped here. But then there's also people who are just in the cars with the windows rolled up who I think did not plan on getting into this situation tonight, and here they are on Washington Avenue at the bridge. No one seems to be attempting to get out of the area or to move. And I mean, none of them seem to be overly concerned here. It's not, a situation, although you can see it. Let's turn around. You can see what's going on in Washington Avenue. Washington Avenue being blocked down there. You can see the two people holding the flags down the block, and there are cars now beeping because obviously they do want to get through. But yeah, the one direction of Washington Avenue is being blocked there. But other than that, it's mostly these cars up here by the bridge. I was actually surprised when we started this how much traffic was still on the road at 7:30, 7:45 with the 8 o'clock curfew, especially because last night I was down here and downtown was a ghost town. So I think a lot of those cars were related to people who were involved in various protests, but now clearly some of these people are just stuck. And if you take a look here, they are now kneeling on the ground here on the Washington Avenue Bridge, people taking a knee, people sitting down, so obviously not planning on going anywhere. And we're just going to kind of have to watch and see how this plays out. People are holding up their signs, they're holding up their hands. There doesn't seem to be an effort to necessarily confront police officers, but there also doesn't seem to be an effort to back away from them.
And they have moved everybody off of the interstate. That was job number one. And job number two is maybe they're kind of reinforcing themselves, getting themselves ready for whatever kind of move they might make towards these protesters. We have been seeing some on the entrance ramps, which you can't see right now, but in our wide shots of the vehicles on the entrance ramps up to Washington Avenue, like they're getting ready to move some vehicles up there too. So for right now, a stalemate, but that obviously could change.
Let's go live to Boyd Hooper. He's got a little different perspective on what's happening right in that area, not too far away from Lauren. Boyd, what are you seeing?
Yeah, well, we're actually right across the freeway from Lauren, kind of kitty corner on that bridge overpass on Washington Avenue, and we're seeing maybe 150 officers. As Devin pans over, in full riot gear. They have been in this position now. They were stationed maybe 300 feet up the freeway. They moved down to this point. They're probably another 300 feet from that bridge now, from that overpass. And then just beyond the overpass, there's another a smaller contingent of officers on the other side of the overpass. What I can't see, and what I've heard Randy allude to, is people on the freeway underneath that overpass, and you'll have to be my eyes for that from the helicopter.
Well, they cleared that group out of there, Boyd.
Okay, that group's gone then.
Yeah, that group is up at Bobby and Steve's, basically.
Got it, okay. And I'm looking across the freeway at that group right now. I heard Lauren estimate a couple hundred people on the ground, and from up above, we're 5 stories up on a parking garage. I think that's probably a pretty accurate estimate. They mean business. There was a car just a minute ago, right before he came to us, who made the mistake of turning onto the on-ramp and tried to get onto the freeway, and there was a volley of non-lethal shots fired at that car, which quickly shifted into reverse and got the heck out of here. So, yeah, they're not going to mess around with that sort of thing in any way, shape, or form.
Well, we're seeing now right in front of you, it looks like a group of law enforcement that are attempting to come up. That might be a frontage road, or is that an entrance ramp right there? What you're showing us?
Yeah, it's the entrance ramp off Washington onto 35W North, onto the northbound lanes of 35W.
So they're
they are beginning to march.
Yep,
I
and
just
there
heard
they go.
They are grouping. I heard their commander give them the order to march.
Here they go.
And that's what they're doing. So I think we could presume
Let's stay with
that
this.
they're heading toward the group.
Now the group on the other side of the interstate isn't moving, which is closer to where those protesters
and
are, Bobby and Steve's. These are on the other side of Washington Avenue. So as Boyd's camera is showing, and they've got, they're moving forward. There's no doubt about it.
I think what you're going to see here is they're going to turn right when they get to get to Washington Avenue and walk down to those protesters.
What
we don't
often see them with guns drawn. I apologize. We tend to be talking over each other, just so the viewer knows at home. We've got a delay, so it's a little hard for us to have a real smooth conversation here with someone in the field. And so I apologize for talking over you, Boyd. But you don't often see them approaching with their guns drawn. Usually they're just walking in a line. That's interesting, and it must be tear gas canisters, I'm assuming, that they have there.
And we also have our chopper up still, so maybe we can take a look at that shot, or maybe split screen with what Boyd's camera is showing. And
we're moving just.
Yep, we got you. There
we're
we
moving,
go.
Randy,
Now
just to get to a little better spot. And what you can see now is officers coming from the other direction too. So these two groups of officers are now assembling together.
And you can see here, we're seeing it in real time, what I'm assuming they did last night.
And they are moving to the right.
Yep.
Where they took these big groups of people.
As predicted, Julie.
So I think what we're going to see here is them clearing out that group.
Go ahead, Boyd. What were you saying?
Well, I was just saying, I don't know if there's another group of people who are coming up on Washington Avenue east of that overpass, because that's the direction that the officers are now faced. I can't see over there. There's a roof in my way. But maybe you can from Sky 11.
Yeah, it's getting harder to see as well because the sun is starting to go down. But this may be the tactic they used last night when they had big groups of people gathering. They would kind of approach from all angles and in that way divide that group up, because we know from what we saw last night, they don't want large groups of protesters. They want to make sure that they're isolating smaller groups because they're easier to manage. So we may be seeing that play out here in real time, trying to get this group of maybe a couple hundred protesters broken up into smaller groups, ideally getting them to go home. But as Lauren said, she talked to several people in that crowd that say they have no intention of following the curfew order and going home tonight. That line of officers, I'm assuming, is still moving, Boyd? We've lost sight of them.
No, they're in position now. Can you? Oh, okay. If you're looking at our shot, you're seeing them.
Oh, that's them. I'm sorry. It's a
they're
smaller
lined up
shot.
on Washington Avenue. Yeah, they're on Washington Avenue. Well, interestingly, though, they're not pointing west toward the group of protesters that we were looking at from the rooftop here. They're actually facing east. So presumably there are other protesters that I can't see that may be coming up on Washington Avenue from the east.
That's the Seven Corners district back in there with a lot of
that's exactly right, Randy.
hotels and bars and restaurants. And when the crowd dispersed on the other side of the interstate, some of them probably went right and some of them probably went left. So what we don't see, unless the chopper is over that area, we don't see if there are...
All right, there's movement here now. There is some movement here now.
And Boyd, Minneapolis...
Randy, you commented earlier.
Just let me read this tweet quickly from the Minneapolis
I was just gonna
police
say,
who have
Ray-
said there's a large group of peaceful protesters on Washington Avenue at 35W. Traffic is blocked in both directions. Individuals in this group have been observed diffusing others who are showing aggression or anger. It's an interesting tweet to come from the Minneapolis police, them recognizing that there are certain people in that group that are trying to calm the group down and keep it peaceful. Go ahead, Boyd.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're seeing too, Julie. You know, they are violating the curfew, but most of what we've seen, everything I've seen from this vantage point has been in a peaceful way. So make of that what you want. Randy had commented earlier about the amount of traffic and pedestrians that were on the overpass, the Washington Avenue overpass, and that cleared really quickly with a few volleys of tear gas underneath the bridge, and that as that gas wafted up over the bridge, there were squealing tires and people making a beeline to get off that bridge, and I'm sure that's exactly what the officers had intended as they launched those volleys of tear gas. So the bridge, the overpass itself is completely empty and devoid of traffic right now, but there's that group of a couple hundred protesters on the west end of the overpass, and then we're presuming just out of our view that there's another group of protesters on the east side, and we're gonna turn the camera now because there's a group of a large group, probably over 100 officers, who are now walking in the southbound lanes of I-35 toward the overpass. Their destination is unknown to us right now. And as you recall, we've been talking about another smaller group of officers who are on the other side of the overpass, and they've maintained their position. And at some point they're going to converge here, it looks like.
Yeah, it does, and it's interesting because you sure can't see any people on the overpass itself. So just watching this play out in real time as state troopers are trying to get people to go home and disperse some of the crowds that have gathered who had been peaceful earlier today, marching for justice for George Floyd. Last night we know they were successful in breaking up those groups and for the most part keeping things quiet in Minneapolis and St. Paul. But obviously we've
also had a number of we're just going to add, Julie, we have a number of Minneapolis police officers in their blue uniforms now arriving on the scene as well with squad cars. Often when we see large numbers of squad cars arrive, that signifies they're getting ready to make arrests. I don't know if that's the case this time, but just an observation that we've made that there are a number of additional squads that have arrived on the scene.
And did that group go
There is
under-
also, Devin, can you, Devin, I'm going to have Devin pan over here because there's also behind the officers, the National Guard has an additional presence with Humvees and other military vehicles.
I'm on top of the
So in a few hundred feet just up the freeway is where that incident happened earlier today with the tanker truck that drove into the crowd of protesters. So this has been a very active spot for us for several hours. First with that peaceful protest on the freeway, then the tanker truck and the clearing of the freeway that took place, and then now all within a few hundred feet, it's escalated to this tense situation right now with the protesters who are peaceful but refusing to leave and obey the curfew, and this ever-growing presence of officers who are would appear to be in position to make arrests.
I'm hoping we can get Lauren lined up to check in with her since she's kind of in amongst those people, the protesters themselves. And then maybe if we could get lined up the video of that semi that's going down the interstate as soon as we finish talking to Lauren to get people up to speed who maybe are just joining us on what happened earlier this evening. But right now let's check in with Lauren because it appears she's on the move. Lauren?
Yeah, that's right. So, Julie, on Washington Avenue, another group of police officers came from the other side, kind of had the protesters penned in. Those police officers started putting on their masks, you know, as though they were going to have some more of the chemical irritants or tear gas released. And so people are kind of clearing out here. They're on the move, trying to get out of here, but this is sort of what we've seen in the past. You can see, oh, and now police are coming to stop them at another end. They're running. Here, their tear gas is coming. The protesters are running away at this point. And you can see the police cars over that way. You can perhaps hear them. We see them with their lights flashing. So this is one of those issues like we've seen again and again, one of those situations where the police officers are coming at them from a number of directions. And people right now are just running. They want out. They want out.
And
we're trying to just sort of get a lay of the land.
Yeah, do they have a way to get
Sorry,
out?
Julie,
It seems like they're surrounded on all sides, so there must be a way they can
They
get
are
out.
surrounded. People are now hopping a fence over here by the gas station. I don't know where that's going to take them, but they're hopping a fence. They want out. They want to get out of here. But this is, you know, what police were saying. They're going to get these folks surrounded, and they are surrounded right now. They have police all around them. As Boyd has mentioned multiple times. Oh, there we go. Now they're firing. Non-lethal rounds, I should be clear about that. But as Boyd was mentioning, this was a crowd that was peaceful. See, they tried to hop the fence over there. I'm sure if Adam can go. And now they're hopping the fence back because the rounds are coming from over the fence. So, yeah, police are not messing around. They're getting these people out of here tonight. And the people are basically running. They're surrounded. They're looking for a place to be. We're trying to stay somewhere and just kind of be safe in here. So please know that we're trying to do that.
Yep, and
We'll keep
and why don't
talking as
you
we move, but we
why don't
need
you
to
get
get somewhere safe.
Somewhere safe, and let them know that you're media, because we should make clear for our viewers as well. The media does have permission to be out past curfew tonight, so that we can bring this story to you. Yeah, and even though that is the case, that some media did get hit with rubber bullets and tear gas last night. So we want to make sure that Lauren is safe. It appears they're using the same tactic tonight that St. Paul police tried to use last night when people went onto the bridge. They tried to get them not trapped, if you will, but contained on that bridge because they wanted to go in and make arrests. So that may be what's happening here, is they're not letting them have any way out because they're going to try to make some arrests here for people for breaking curfew tonight. And the people who are there are very well aware of that and are wanting to have their voices heard, and in that way, they're aware that they may be arrested and that tear gas could be deployed or other non-lethal means. But we did see the police using that last night. And in St. Paul, the police chief, Axtell, said they attempted to do that on the bridge, but those protesters were able to get off the bridge before they made a lot of arrests. I'm not sure what we're looking at from Sky 11, but you could see a large group of people with their hands up walking away from the officers, and you can see now officers are tightening their ranks there on the people who had gathered to protest.
The officers that you see at the bottom of your screen, I believe this is still Bobby and Steve's, in that corner. That would be the entrance ramp up from 35W South up to where Bobby and Steve's is located. If we pull out just a little bit, if I've got my bearings right, yep, there's Bobby and Steve. So they have come up that entrance ramp down from below, although there is a group down below as well. You see them moving down there on the interstate as well. But what they've done is they've come up both sides and basically surrounded those protesters on the side, the Washington Avenue side of Bobby and Steve's. Keep in mind, there's a lot of residential area down there, apartment buildings, condos in that area down there. A lot of people live in that area. So as they push, and the U.S. Bank is down in that area to the left of Bobby and Steve's, down Washington Avenue and to the left. So there's a lot of, and you can see police there behind on the other side of that street down there. You can see the flashing of the police. So they're moving in. You can see them right there on the bottom of your screen with Boyd's camera. And they're moving vehicles up. There they go, moving vehicles up as well, and they're taking off. They may trap them at Bobby and Steve's, you know, in that parking lot area, because there's a fence there, as Lauren showed us.
Yeah, let's go to Lauren right now. She is safely on the other side, we believe, of the police line. Lauren?
Yes, we're here. Officers are giving us instructions as to where we're going. We're showing them our press passes, and they are giving us instructions as to where we're going. They had the crowd all really penned in. Now they've started with the non-lethal rounds that they're firing. The crowd basically was running in every direction, trying to figure out where they were going, but police officers did have them completely surrounded. And so at that point, they were running. We started to walk in a way that we thought was safe, and then people were saying, no, no, get back the other way. The police said that they're coming over the fence at them. The crowd wound up almost in a circle. Police surrounded them. They at this point, the police officers outnumber the protesters, I would say. And then we just saw the protesters running across the street, which you can see. So far tonight, we have seen just 3 arrests. I don't know, I can't really see from my vantage point what's happening now. I can't see if anyone has been hit with non-lethal rounds. You can smell the tear gas in the air, and you can certainly feel the tension.
Yeah, Lauren, listen, we've got
Yes,
a view.
Randy.
We got a view from Boyd's camera, and on the other side of Bobby and Steve's on Washington, they are pushing, they're compressing this group into that Bobby and Steve's parking lot area, it looks like. So they're really kind of trapped. They've got nowhere to go. They've come up the entrance ramp. So really the point of arrest here now looks like it's going to be in that parking lot of Bobby and Steve's with really, for these protesters, there's really nowhere to go. There are vehicles now being brought up there as well by police. So they are, tactically now they have kind of, they've surrounded them in this parking lot.
Yeah. And Randy, you can probably see there, just the sheer number of law enforcement here is really astonishing. Everywhere we look, there seemed to be another 20 police officers coming at us. Said they were outnumbered by protesters. This is not the case here. And while we never saw anyone get violent, we have not seen anyone fight back against the police. We've seen them disobey orders to leave, but no one has gotten violent or fought back against police. And police, we haven't seen them really come here. And at a point, really, you just saw these protesters screaming and running. And so it was clear they knew that police had them surrounded. And now you'll see better than I am what the arrests are happening and if those are peaceful or not. The arrests we saw earlier, there was no resistance. Police had them handcuffed. It was pretty run-of-the-mill arrest. But this is.
I know you
this
don't
is
have a
what's happening
monitor
here on the Washington Avenue Bridge right now.
Yeah, I know you don't have a monitor, but we see
No, I
from
don't.
Sky 11 that the law enforcement has completely surrounded them in the parking lot on the Washington Avenue. And I can't tell how many protesters are there, maybe 50, 60 at the most, but they're going nowhere. They're trapped in that parking lot at this point. So it's just a matter of time as to when they move in to arrest people and all that. And I don't see a point or not, but
that were made today. Some of the things these protesters have been asking for justice for George Floyd, one of which is that all of the officers involved be arrested. We know the man who had his knee on George Floyd's neck has been charged with third-degree murder. Another thing that the protesters had been asking for was that Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman be taken off the case. Some had asked for him to resign, but others were saying, we don't want him, including George Floyd's family, had asked that he not be the lead prosecutor on this case. And we learned today that Attorney General Keith Ellison is now in charge of the criminal trial of former officer Chauvin. So some of the things that these protesters have demanded have happened, and now we will just see how all of that plays out. We're understanding the Hennepin County Attorney will be working in conjunction with the Attorney General, but this is definitely now the Attorney General's case, which is something that the protesters and George Floyd's family had demanded. They were marching today saying no bail for this former officer who is now in custody. They do not want him to be released pending trial. They also want the other officers who were on scene to be arrested. These are the reasons that they've been marching today, and we watch those marches unfold peacefully. They were inspiring. There were beautiful moments and a lot of unity throughout the day today. So while we're focusing on this right now because it's live and it's all happening right now, we want you to know we have been on the air for hours covering many different peaceful protests, rallies, and the reason that these protesters are out here today. Of course, for the last 50 minutes, they've been breaking the law because they're out past curfew. And law enforcement and the governor has said, we're just not going to stand for that because we can't tell the good guys from the bad guys, frankly, once the sun goes down and things start going south. So everyone has been made aware that if you stay out past curfew, these are the consequences. They're consequences that these protesters have decided that they want to live with, and that's a choice that they're making tonight. We did see last night that police were very effective in breaking up large groups. It wasn't that we noticed or had large amounts of arrests, but the police were very effective in getting the groups separated, so were there just a few small groups that they were dealing with instead of several large groups of protesters. But Randy, important to point out as well that the rallies and marches today were tens of thousands of people. A lot more people were out on the streets today than were last night.
Well, we saw it on the bridge before the truck incident. It was a massive crowd, and it was a peaceful crowd. The entire time it's all been peaceful. Even this group that's surrounded here right now has been peaceful. And you're right. If they're arrested, it'll be for the curfew. It won't be for anything else. All right, let's go back to Lauren. Lauren?
Hi, you guys. I just want to update you about what's happening. We now do hear a loudspeaker. The announcement was, this is the Minnesota State Patrol. We have this parking lot surrounded. Get down on the ground now. You are under arrest. So they are making arrests right now as we speak. Behind us, there is a bus rolling up, which appears like it is here to take these protesters into custody. And I think Julie made a really interesting point there, that these were peaceful protests all day. I've been talking, that name is on their lips. They have been talking about the need for change in the system. They were here to make a point, and many of them may have decided that civil disobedience and being arrested was how they were going to make that point tonight. They certainly were not in a hurry to leave when police officers wanted them to, and now that is happening. Police are telling them, lay on the ground. We are coming to arrest you. Now, I can't see. We have moved back, as police asked us to, away from where this is happening. So we can't tell what's happening. We know about in that parking lot. You perhaps can from your vantage point view. But we do know that about 4 times now we have heard on the loudspeaker, this is the Minnesota State Patrol, get down on the ground. You are under arrest now. At the same time, behind me, I'm now hearing people chanting George Floyd. So these are people who apparently either got away from the crowd before, or people who have just come to see and are supportive of the protesters. A little hard to tell. There's a lot of chaos here. Or not chaos is probably the wrong word. There's just a lot of people around and a lot of cars around, so it's hard to necessarily always tell who's who. But
Lauren, can you tell?
What I can tell you is right now.
Can you tell if the protesters
Go ahead,
are
Julie.
laying down? When they're saying lay down, is anyone complying with that? Can you tell, or are you too far away?
No, I'm too far away. I'm about a half a block down. We've spent the entire time in the parking lot of that gas station, but then they asked us to move back, you know, as we were showing our press passes. So we cannot see what's happening in there. I know they've made the request multiple times. I can't tell if people are laying down. What I can tell is that police have not per se moved in to subdue the crowd, right? So we haven't seen any sort of commotion from the back of the police line here, and we are behind the police line. Perhaps from an aerial view, we'll be able to tell if they are laying down. But right now, at least, what we know is that they've made the announcement multiple times, and we can't tell if folks are laying down to be arrested at this point.
I'm not sure if Boyd's camera, which is across the interstate, has a better view of what we're looking at and can see this is Boyd's camera, which is on the rooftop across the street. Again, hard to really kind of decipher whether people are on their knees or down, but you can certainly see all the officers, you can certainly see all the vehicles. And our chopper is probably our best view. Again, this is Boyd's camera. Boyd, go ahead.
Yeah, my view is somewhat blocked too, Randy, of the actual process for arresting these protesters who refuse to disperse. I'm looking mostly at the backs of officers. It's one of those things where there were probably some people in that group who expected to get arrested, and then others who thought there was still time to run, but their judgment was flawed if that was their intention, because at some point they just decided no one was going to leave, and when they did start shooting off those concussion grenades, you could see a number of people, just trying to get away, and then at that point, the entire area had been surrounded by officers, so they just pushed them back up into the parking lot from where they had come. We saw officers behind the gas station, actually, a row of them. They were going back there just to check and see if, it looked like checking to see if people were hiding in the bushes behind the gas station. If once you cross that point of no return, your odds of getting out of here were probably pretty thin. There are plenty of law enforcement personnel who are going to execute the order to take these folks into custody.
It looks like we've got some officers maybe now approaching to make those arrests. And this, of course, is a moment where things have the potential to go sideways. So we're hoping that they're able to make some peaceful arrests. We've been seeing so many nights of unrest here in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and have been so fortunate that there have not been serious injuries, especially considering today we had a semi drive down 35 with thousands of protesters on the interstate. And even in that instance, it doesn't appear that anyone was seriously hurt, including the truck driver. So we're hoping we can see the same thing play out here tonight. Minneapolis police just tweeted that the group on Washington Avenue has been encircled by law enforcement. One firearm has been recovered near the location of that group. So they are now doing a much better job of keeping all of us and all of you at home informed. I would say both Minneapolis, St. Paul, and on a statewide level of what's happening as things are happening. We know that the law enforcement presence tonight will be just as large as it was last night. And we talked with the Minnesota National Guard earlier, who said they have the ability to move. They're pretty agile, so they have the ability to move quickly wherever they need to go, even if that means outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And we definitely saw that last night. We had reporters on the scene who would be standing there saying everything is peaceful, and all of a sudden the entire convoy of law enforcement would start moving quickly and going down the street together. So assuming those will be the same tactics that they're using tonight. But as we watch this unfold, this is Minneapolis right now, clearly trying to get these groups to break up, go home at best, but at least not be gathered in large groups as the sun goes down here tonight. I don't know if we still have Boyd on the phone or not, but you know, I
am here, Julie.
And I want to let our viewers at home know, if you're watching this live on the KARE 11 app or you're streaming this, in a few minutes here, it's going to go dark. We're just refreshing. It's going to be right back. So don't worry. If you're watching us and you're streaming us, not over the air, but streaming us, don't worry. It's going to come back quickly, but we just want to let you know there'll be a little glitch coming up here at 9 o'clock. It seems very quiet there, Boyd. I know you're a ways away, but how would you describe the feeling?
We're seeing more tear gas, actually, Julie. There's another row of officers, and I'm going to have Devin, my photographer, just pan over to the other scene that we're watching. So this is on the opposite side of that Washington Avenue overpass, and these officers are lined up. And we just saw tear gas wafting up over the side of the building. They're shooting some more off now. So we presume that there is another group of protesters, perhaps, that have refused to disperse just down Washington Avenue. We're going to presume that's what's happening because they're shooting that tear gas off. And I'm expecting we're going to see another round of arrests down on this end of the bridge.
It would be interesting, and of course we can't be in two places at once with our helicopter, and it's been focused on Bobby and Steve's, but these guys, these law enforcement officers are pointed the opposite direction into the Seven Corners area, where there's a hotel and restaurants and bars and places like that. There isn't really, I mean, you can get out of that area, but it'd be interesting to see what's happening in that area if officers have come up from the backside of the... We can certainly see the gas, Randy. What's that?
Well, we can see the gas. We can't see the people because it's obstructed by a building, but we're definitely seeing the gas that's coming up, a couple hundred feet down the street from the officers that you're looking at, or you have been looking at, and they're not shooting that obviously into emptiness. So there are some people out of our view right now that gas is being aimed at.
Boyd, we're going to take a little different view here. We have our Danny Spiewak at the Government Center, who has a different, Gordon Severson, who's at the Government Center for a little different angle on what's happening. Gordon?
Yeah, we're here at the Government Center where a large group has stopped inside the Government Center, and a couple other groups fragmented from this main group. But we've seen a lot of military presence and police officers kind of setting up a perimeter.
The target that I was at the time, going to other businesses, as you heard the chief, looting, damaging property. within the last hour, they returned to the Midway target and were launching those projectiles, as you heard the chief mention, rocks, glass bottles, water bottles, and officers have been using tear gas in response, as the chief said, also using, as he said, non-lethal ammunition, so rubber bullets on the crowds and protesters that were outside that target. We moved into our live truck because it wasn't safe as of right now. So the St. Paul Police Department, as you heard the chief, they're asking people to disperse. They're asking people to stay away from the University Avenue area as this continues, as the crowds continue to gather around the area. We also know that there was a fire at a nearby TJ Maxx in the Midway Shopping Center. St. Paul Police Department was tweeted that out as well. But the crowds, they've been moving to different businesses throughout this area. A witness told me that a nearby liquor store was looted, also a nearby pawn shop, so a number of businesses. Also nearby the target, there was a Verizon shop, a noodles restaurant, and a vitamin shop that were also heavily damaged, the windows heavily damaged from the crowds. So definitely a changing situation. So we'll continue to monitor it as we're here in the Midway area, but they continue to go to different areas throughout the Midway shopping center.
Megan, we appreciate your report. We know that several other Target stores and CVS stores have closed just as a precaution because of the looting that has been happening. Maplewood has asked people to stay away from retail areas because of that flash looting, as they're calling it. Right now, we're going to head over to the epicenter of last
officers arrive on the scene.
Oh my gosh.
You can see
Oh
that
my
the
gosh.
truck was going incredibly.
Well, oh my gosh, people got out of the way. That's a good thing. If he was honking his horn, maybe, I don't know how that happens. I honestly don't know.
And this is where we saw
That is
people started swarming the semi. And then we did see that door from Sky 11. We saw it open and close several times.
Right.
So I don't know if there's one person, two people in that cab.
Hello, welcome to my channel. I was trying to stream live what was going on here in Minnesota, but for some reason they have cut our internet power or whatever was going on. I guess they actually shooting at these people, so you all cannot see this. So they just cut the broadcast off. This shit is crazy. It's really crazy here. So if they give us access again to start back broadcasting, what they're doing now is basically arresting people that you saw that was at Bob's and Steve's, and now people is headed to the government center. So you see all those police officers that was at Bob's and Steve has to basically hurry up and go down to the government center before these people tear downtown Minneapolis up. So time is of the essence here. But if they decide to turn back on our internet, just fucking Patriot Act shit, they keep turning off the internet service, keep turning this off and turning this off. Like, I don't understand, but okay. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I am at home. I'm not amongst this. I just wanted to go live, like to show you all what's going on and things like this. I do not have copyrights of this video. This is not my video. This was from Carrie 11 News. This was actually our news channel here, so you was just getting a live feed from Carrie 11 News. I do not have copyrights for this. So I'm just constantly watching the news here, but you can't see what I'm seeing for some reason. I'm not for sure. They're trying to show you some other things. So I guess they cut this off from the world to see. Like, this is crazy. So let me just stop this. If I find it, I'll start it again.